Okay, it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to declare the meeting is open. Just check the IT staff that we're ready for recording. We are. Thank you, Craig. Okay, now can I advise all present that an audio recording is being made and has now been switched on of this meeting. All persons attending the meeting are to be respectful of and considerate towards other persons attending the meeting. Language and conduct at this meeting that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory or threatening to a person attending the meeting or listening to the recording is not acceptable. For the purposes of the recording, elected members should wait until I announce them before speaking, and I do request that all mobile devices in the room, including in the public gallery, are either turned off or put to silent. Present this evening we have from my left Councillor Ryan Posselt, the Deputy Lord Mayor Zelinda Sherlock, the Lord Mayor Anna Reynolds, Councillor Bill Harvey, Councillor Mike Dutta, Alderman Louise Bloomfield, Councillor Louise Elliott, Alderman Marty Zuko, Councillor John Kelly, and myself, Councillor Ben Lohberger. CEO, do we have any apologies?
No, Chief.
No. Okay. Leave of absences? No. All right, we'll move on to the acknowledgement of country. Just in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which this city of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. I recognise the value of continuing Aboriginal knowledge and cultural practice, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Okay, that brings us on to section 2, which is confirmation of the minutes. Can I have an elected member to move the motion to confirm the minutes, please?
Moved.
So moved by the Lord Mayor. Is there any debate about those? No, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. No. All those against? That motion is carried unanimously. Consideration of supplementary items. Do we have any supplementaries, CEO?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Moving on. Indications of conflicts of interest from around the table. Are there any of those tonight? That's a no. Okay, is there any desire to transfer any of the agenda items tonight? Noting that's a very short agenda. Right, that's a no. Okay, so we move on to the start of the meeting proper. Reports of special committees. I'll invite Councillor Posselt to introduce the report from the City Transport Committee and to move that motion.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to move it, Chair. Very briefly, the Transport Committee continues to work well and productively with officers and the community. It's got membership from the Motorbike Riders Association, from public transport users, drivers, cycling. So it's well represented, and you're welcome to come along, any elected member, to the committee. The next meeting in early October, I think. We've had a pretty consistent committee, and I've asked for an allocation of time and for each member of the committee, Chair, to present a short, less than 5-minute presentation on how their experience has been on the committee, if they feel like they've contributed, but also more broadly on how they see transport for the city as the term comes to a close. So as I said, if you want to come along, you're welcome to, but otherwise I'm really looking forward to hearing from our community members that have sat with us for 4 years about what our priorities should be, or the next council's priorities should be for the next 4 years. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Posselt. Was there any discussion or questions about that? I think the Lord Mayor was first. Dutta's next.
Through you, Chair. Councillor Posselt, I'm just wondering whether the Greenways report that was sort of featured in our bike plan, has that been sort of progressed or discussed further, or is it all the focus on the Augusta Road?
No, so the Greenways,
they could have another name.
Ollie, I think his name was, our Harvard grad that came out for 12 weeks. He presented to the committee and also to Cycling South, and that formed the basis of the Hobart Bike Plan. So the Hobart Bike Plan, which we endorsed at the last council meeting, I believe, is the Greenways study just wrapped up into Hobart's council document.
So do you know when they might start? Because I think the whole idea of that was that it was more mapping, not infrastructure. Like, are they sort of planning to do any sort of promotion of
of route finding and things like that. I think
Yeah,
that's all expressed in the bike plan as something that is action points to move through. Yeah.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. Just want to ask about this Petrie Point walkway. Just a question with regards to the complexity of the project. So it's my understanding the complexity with regards to this project has to do with the Crown licenses. And I'm wondering if we have heard anything from the Minister.
No, we haven't.
Okay. So when was it written? When did you write?
Oh, significant. Some months ago now. We met with the Minister after we had the workshop with the council, and then wrote. So I'd need to check the dates there, Councillor, but it was quite a number of months ago.
Okay. So just one follow-up question, if you don't mind. So the complexity is just to do with the licenses?
Well, there's plenty of complexity with the project, as I sort of reported, but certainly a crucial decision is whether you are able to amend the licences, because at the moment they are on the actual route of the proposed walkway, the coastal version of the walkway. So.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Has the council touched on yet the active transport dashboard? Has that been built into another document that council's already seen, or what's the situation with active transport dashboard and council?
Yeah, so it's a project of the transport team that's currently being developed. It's not live, so the purpose of the committee for those types of internal facing initiatives is for them to show us what their plans are, what they're thinking, and get the feedback from the community if there's any direction shifts that they should be, counting more or looking for different types of vehicles as opposed to pedestrians versus cyclists versus scooters, understanding the technology. So my best understanding, Councillor Elliott, through your chair, is that it is in development and it's not ready to go live just yet.
And just follow up, so is that correct that the council hasn't said it wants anything like that or approved anything like that?
It's in the transport plan.
I think it's through the transport strategy, or I think in terms of but we can certainly verify that and come back to you.
Yeah, that's cool. And one other thing, I noticed there's 7 participants and 7 staff members there. Do we really need 7 staff members at these sessions? It seems like a lot of people.
It all depends on what's being presented. I think I was one of the staff on that night because of the Battery Point walkway, for instance. So I left after I did my piece. But it all depends on what's.
So
being
every
presented.
meeting, it's not 7 staff sitting there.
I don't believe so. It depends on what's actually on the agenda and whether you needed to actually provide the advice.
Yeah. So my feedback would be if to minimise the number of staff sitting there.
All right. Are there any further questions? Okay, we'll just put that motion. All those in favour of just accepting the report, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, say no. That is passed unanimously. And just for the record, Councillor Kitsos has just entered the room. All right. Okay, that brings us on to reports, probably the biggest item of the night. I just want to remind everybody about just being polite to each other and following the meeting procedures, and also just when it comes to questions, come through the chair and I will make the determination as to who answers it. Thank you. So, I guess we move it first. I think we'll hear it first before we move this one.
Thank
So,
you.
Mr. Utter.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, elected members. Tonight's an opportunity to hear a bit of an update on the work the economic development team's doing in the nighttime economy space. There's been a lot of activity and meetings and forums that we've held over the last couple of months. There's also been a bit of, rhetoric out there in the media around the work in the nighttime economy, what's happening. So we'll do a bit of a presentation tonight and then happy to take questions after that. So I'll hand over to Nick.
Thanks, Ben. I think we've got a presentation coming up there somewhere. Okay, so just quickly, I guess it goes without saying that the nighttime economy is a very important contributor to our local economy, and as Ben touched on, the purpose of this presentation is to give you a bit of an update about the sorts of things that we've been involved in from an officer's perspective over the last few months, to better understand what some of the challenges and opportunities the industry faces, but also to seek feedback from the sector as well. Again, this probably goes without saying for most of the people in the room, but just to quickly touch on what is the nighttime economy. So it's all sorts of economic activity that occurs between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. And the way that the data is broken up that's given to us is based around core and non-core. So core is broken down into drink, leisure and entertainment and food. And non-core is things like private transport, hotels, accommodation, things like that. Core is because that is the primary purpose of those types of businesses, is that they operate within that 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. time frame. And non-core is obviously because they don't necessarily just primarily focus on nighttime activities, they focus on the 24-hour economy more broadly. So this data is in the report. It was based on a report that was done through the Capital City Lord Mayor's Committee, released in 25 for the 23-24 period. So it showed that since they started collecting data way back in 2009, there had been significant growth in the number of businesses, the number of jobs in that sector, and also the turnover in the nighttime economy businesses had essentially doubled over that period of time. This next slide, which is not in the report because it's based on a report produced by the same group that has not yet been released for public consumption, but just some of the highlight data out of that. It actually shows that the number of businesses and employment in the sector over the last 12 months has declined. However, turnover has continued to grow. Core nighttime economy accounts for 9% of all businesses and 12% of all jobs in Hobart, and both those figures are well above the national averages of 5% and 8% respectively. Again, highlighting the importance of the sector to the city. Did you want me to go back? Alderman Zuko, was there something there you want?
When does that come out, Nick?
It got sent to us last week as a final version, so it's due to come out. It's due to be released publicly this week. So I guess as I've pointed out there, the data tells us part of the story, but we know that the data is only part of the story and that we need to have conversations with industry about what that data means on the ground in terms of the challenges that businesses are facing, challenges or opportunities that businesses are facing. So going back a bit over 6 months ago in November last year, we held a workshop with around about 30 different industry representatives to have a workshop around what are those sorts of key challenges and opportunities. And as it mentions there on the slide, key challenges are around things like the rising cost of operational expenses, especially things like insurance was one of the things that was pointed out to us. I guess the feedback that we received was that any time you put on an event with lots of people and potentially where alcohol is involved, and things like public liability insurance make putting on events really difficult to finance. Cost of compliance and red tape. And the feedback that we've received to date has been most of the issues have been relating to liquor licensing laws, and some of that is to do with timeframes around lockouts and lock-ins and when people need to be out of beer gardens and things like that, and the impact that that has on cost and operational efficiency and safety and things like that. Skill shortages is a big issue for industry. Across the city, a lack of diverse venue options was flagged, so lack of live music venues. Sober spaces was an interesting one that was flagged by different members of the industry. Limited late night transport and parking options leads to some safety concerns for not just people that are out participating in nighttime activities, but also workforce. So opportunities, I guess one of the key things that came out of this first workshop was that the feedback we received was the industry was really keen for ongoing collaboration and engagement. Investing in workforce development type opportunities. Hospitality Tasmania has a specific program that focuses on that, so there's no proposal in any of the work that we're doing to necessarily invest in workforce development type activities at this stage, but rather to work with groups like Hospitality Tasmania to support what they're doing. Entertainment precincts, that's something that's come up pretty regularly in the conversations that we've had, especially to provide greater certainty and clarity regarding regulations and what businesses can do, can't do in different parts of the city. Looking at greater activation of public spaces and also investing in infrastructure that would support more outdoor activities in the wintertime. So following on from that, the Lord Mayor and her office organised a meeting for myself and Laura Eaton to meet with the Minister for Tourism, Hospitality and Events and her key staff to discuss those challenges and opportunities, and for them to invite them to very much be part of that conversation and part of the ongoing engagement. They spoke to us at that time about the red tape reduction initiative that they've implemented and their willingness to keep working with us on things as we go forward. Ben attended a nighttime economy event in Sydney around October, November last year, where he met with the commissioners from Queensland and New South Wales, but also learned about other sorts of challenges and opportunities, I suppose, at a government, policy, regulatory level, things that we could learn from other parts of Australia. And following that forum and following the discussions with the Minister was when we started to organise a possible visit from the commissioners. So that led to the development of a program of activities on the 27th and 28th of May, where the commissioners from New South Wales and Queensland were invited to come down here and share their experience with different industry stakeholders, but also internal stakeholders. I guess one of the key things that we learned from them prior to the workshops, but also as part of the workshops, is that we need to have greater clarity around what our own identity is, what our strengths and opportunities are, and focus on those and to amplify those. And they were telling us that it's not for us to pick up things that they've done in New South Wales or Queensland and try to apply those in Hobart, because that's just not going to work. We need to know who we are and focus on the things that make us strong. But there's still a lot that can be learnt from people from other parts of the country and from other parts of the world. The Commissioner from New South Wales gets invited all over the world to speak about nighttime economy type opportunities and is considered a world leader on this particular subject. So some of the key learnings from those couple of days is, as I touched on, clarifying our identity, who we are, what we have, and to amplify that. The biggest competition to the nighttime economy is what they refer to as the at-home economy, so getting people to leave their couch and come out and experience a range of different events and activities. Safe and accessible transport, essential. Getting everyone on the same page around some consistent messaging about what we're trying to achieve is really important. And some of the things that they'd sort of suggested, which aligned with some of the things that I mentioned from the previous slide around the establishment of things like special entertainment precincts. So we have special entertainment precincts in different parts of the city with, I guess, sort of bespoke rules and regulations to support the activation of the nighttime economy in those areas. In some parts of the city, through some of the meetings that Ben and I have been involved in with industry stakeholders, they don't want us to change anything, they like it the way it is, but then in other parts of the city there's opportunity to improve, obviously. And then the last one is more of a long-term initiative around, it's called Purple Flag accreditation. And the reason that we've sort of put that up there is because it's less about the accreditation, in my opinion, it's more about the process that we would potentially go through to achieve accreditation, because accredited precincts or accredited destinations are world leaders when it comes to safety, activation, the use of public spaces, our transport systems, the diversity of options in those precincts, things like that. So if we were working towards an accreditation program, one of the really strong things about that is more the process rather than the accreditation, I think. And then lastly, on I think it was about the 13th of June, instigated by Alderman Zuko, facilitated by the CEO, we had a meeting with about another 6 or 7 industry stakeholders to clarify the purpose of those events and activities that happened on the 27th and the 28th, and to continue the conversation about what are the sorts of key challenges that they wanted to make us aware of. That group flagged that they were really keen to see the establishment of an industry reference group, so to continue that engagement with the industry. And they also flagged one particular business in particular, flagged the liquor licensing issues, especially around the lockout and lock-in type rules. So after a certain time, if you've got a beer garden, customers can no longer be in that space, they've all got to be inside, which creates operational security issues and also other concerns in terms of safety of patrons and things like that. So next steps is we've been chatting to Hospitality Tas a fair bit over the last couple of weeks, obviously on the back of the announcement of the closure of a number of venues in the city, just to understand what they're doing and to look at how we can work with them to support what they're doing. As the industry body representing this particular sector, we want to work collaboratively with that particular group as much as we possibly can. We certainly don't want to do anything that's duplicating what they're doing, so we've been trying to liaise with them around organising another meeting to talk through what those next steps might look like. We'll organise another meeting around things like the live music office and the work that the Creative City team will be doing to activate live music spaces and creating opportunities for musicians and things of the like. Then the plan from all of that is to map out a bit of a plan around the things that we need to focus on, whether it be things that council can do specifically or whether it's things that we need to advocate for, bring it back here to elected members for further discussion, and then go forth and implement. I think that's it from me,
Right.
Councillor Lobo.
Thank you. All right, I imagine there's a few questions on this. I might start on my right. I'm just going to move around, I think, because everybody, I think, is going to want to speak. So we'll go first with Councillor Kelly. If you've got anything to-
With respect, I'd just like to hear what you have to say. I'd like to.
Okay.
I've got a fair bit to say, though. Yeah.
Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, just a couple of questions for the moment, just in regards to the meeting of the CEO with the industry that I initiated. Was there any discussion about the potential pop-ups that was in the media, that was already released to the media, but the council planned to have pop-ups around the place from the industry group? Because I'm just saying, I haven't seen that up there, and I know what feedback I've got from that group. So.
Yeah, so it was never proposed, council certainly never proposed that they'd be offering pop-ups. I think the media picked up that there'd been previous pop-ups were part of the live music office work they've done with other councils, but certainly our council hadn't predetermined what was going to be proposed in terms of that work with that office, but this council never put out any statements or any proposals to be offering pop-ups.
So that was clarified with the industry.
It was, yeah, we had a conversation with industry about that, and they objected to the idea of pop-ups, as you're aware.
Absolutely, I know.
And that's part of the engagement that we'll continue to do with industry, is around how we can better activate live music venues and not create events that are potentially considered direct competition.
And with regulation and red tape, at that meeting, was there any because there's only been 2 points that was put up in regards to what happened at that meeting, in regards to regulation and red tape. Was there any questions, or was there any concerns raised in regards to changes of licences or extension of licences, in particular when it comes to do with outdoor dining spaces?
I'll go to the CEO first.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking.
Yeah, we certainly did. So we spoke about and I think you mentioned it, didn't you, the purple flag or the special entertainment precincts, where we are able to look at more flexibility around not just that, around all sorts of curfews and timeframes around. So we had a good conversation with the group about that.
Yeah, but that was flagged. Are we doing anything about that?
There wasn't, to my recollection, there wasn't any specific mentions of council-related regulation. The main one that came up, which came up in both meetings, unfortunately the business that lost 7 venues last week, they were the one that brought it up, was more to do with liquor licensing. So because they've got beer gardens at 10 o'clock, everybody's got to come inside. That was the main thing that they brought up from my recollection of those conversations.
Yeah, well, I'll ask this question. Are you aware that any changes to the liquor licence also reflects on changing of hours for council? Is that correct or incorrect?
Through you, Chair, nothing that I'm aware of, Alderman Zuko. We did find out late last week that, and this is something that we're keen to work with the state on, they're about to commence a feasibility study into this idea around special entertainment precincts. So we've asked to be able to work in closely with them around the development of that.
I think that's a brilliant concept, because I'm getting tired of people that buy. Sorry, I made a comment. I get tired of people that buy in an entertainment precinct and then complain that there's entertainment there right next door. It's ridiculous.
And if I just on that, if I may, the CBD is a classic example where when we met with Lee Carmichael from Dark Lab, he said leave it as is, don't change anything. But I think part of the challenge in the CBD is there's not a lot of residential development in the CBD currently. So getting those special entertainment precincts right now before potential future residential development comes, I think, is important.
The other thing too is just in regards to the information that's not released yet. There was a reduction in venues, but an increase in turnover. But will that documentation show the bottom line profitability of those venues? Because turnover is only one component, right? Because the turnover is irrelevant. It's the bottom line that comes into play.
Yeah, correct. And through you, Chair. So again, that data is just around business numbers, job numbers and turnover. So to me, that suggests that there is an increased cost of doing business, because if turnover's up but the number of businesses are down, then it suggests that there's an increased cost of doing business. So it doesn't actually show the bottom line. figures in that data, it just shows turnover.
Well, it'd be good to whoever's done that report to go back and actually bring in the bottom line, because I think it's very important.
Can we just clarify, that
Sorry?
was the Council of Lord Mayors that produced that report?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so we'd have to
Through
send
the
it
industry,
back to them.
can.
Councillor Elliott, would you have
Lord
any
Mayor, if
questions?
you don't mind, please.
Just
You know,
order.
we want to
Order,
talk
Zuko.
about, sorry,
It's okay.
we want to talk about respect. I'm speaking, it's my thing, my turn, and I believe that, you know, other people shouldn't be interfering in things, other than if they want to go through the chair to ask a question. I'm sorry,
Thank you.
but if you want to be
Alderman
respectful, let's start it by not interrupting.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
I've only just got one question at this
Yep.
point. So did the council pay for the 2 commissioners to come down?
We didn't,
Mr Arthur?
no, we didn't pay, they didn't get a speaking fee, but we paid for airfares and accommodation.
So we haven't got any other sort of arrangement, like paid for advice and stuff like that? No? Okay.
No, they've, through you, Chair, they've offered to provide us with whatever assistance that we want from this point on. We've built a pretty good connection with them, and they can see the opportunity down here, so at no cost. But they've offered to provide us with access to the sorts of data that they use to really help inform decisions, but also the work that they've done to go through things like that purple flag accreditation. So, but at no additional cost to us.
Yeah, and that was the other question, the purple flag stuff. And you mentioned that you're more interested in, like, the process, the steps that you would take to be accredited rather than achieving the accreditation. So if it was to be pursued, is that something that would come to council in a bigger document or something? So, and can you just remind me, so all these reports and this work we're happening, this is all going to inform a bigger strategy that comes to council, is that right?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So yes, correct. So not so much a strategy, but more a plan around the things that we would do, the things that we would advocate for. So the purple flag accreditation stuff, as I think it would be great if we could achieve accreditation, but if we work towards accreditation, I think equally from a destination perspective, it would be a really positive thing.
And do you know the body that actually runs that? Google isn't making it clear for me.
So the New South Wales Commission's office, they have the licence to run that accreditation here in Australia currently, or they manage the accreditation process here in Australia, but it's an international thing.
All right, okay. And so what sort of the ballpark timeline of we're doing this work, and when will that sort of plan come to council?
Well, the plan was to go back to industry again. They've told us these are the issues, but they've spoken about what their challenges are at a really high level. We want to dig a whole lot deeper into that to better understand specifically what they want us to focus on, and then after we've done that engagement would be to come back to council.
So it's at least a few months away, probably.
I would think so, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Alderman Bloomfield, do you have any questions?
I have a few things. One of them was I got a contact, which I think I sent into council, where I had another operator had questioned Franco being open on Friday nights and the impact it had on traders around the area, and they wanted to know whether or not we could move Franco, for instance, to Wednesday. Obviously, that needs to go through Franco first, which obviously I would have thought we'd do, but I mean, are those kind of things on the table or not? I don't know. I thought we probably already have an agreement, so.
So we received
Yeah.
that. We received that. I received that as well. So
Yeah.
responded that. So we'll consider it and
Yeah.
work with
Yeah.
the different operators with Franco's and understand their views on it. And then
That's right. Yeah. No, I just thought it was just an interesting kind of like lateral concept. The other thing was.
funnily enough, sorry to cut you off, but that did get raised in the meeting with the retailers that we had the week before. So.
Yeah. So that's the thing, I'm completely blind to whatever that meeting was because I wasn't included, involved, or know anything about what the discussions were other than to now. Okay, so the other thing was I see the whole nighttime economy issue as a broken system. When I look at the math behind what we're dealing with a body of people who were customers and who are now financially challenged. We've got an outlook, a city economy outlook of doldrums for 10 years, according to Deloitte's just recently. So there's not as much money as we used to. But we've also got a buying behaviour that's so profoundly challenging and different. But we're kind of like, I'm not seeing anything here, and I'm not seeing any conversations, because I'm not privy to what the conversations were, but I'm assuming I'm not seeing any evidence of conversations that are really addressing, well, what are we going to do if they turn up but they're not really going to drink anymore because they don't really drink? I mean, even the functions that I go to, you know, the large ones at the casino and stuff like that, where normally they'd offer you a glass of wine or a beer, now it's 100% all sparkling water and fruit juice. Like the entire behaviour of all these social functions have completely profoundly changed, and it's no longer about drinking. So if that's where the bulk of money is coming from, these organisations, they need a profound shift. Otherwise, how are they going to make money? And we're not seeing that. And it concerned me that there was a lot of discussion, for instance, about how, well, we'll just bring in more entertainment. And then there was this silly thing about going off to federal government to get 50% rebates on spending with entertainers. But I just see the whole thing is broken. I'm not really seeing where we're addressing, or how are they going to make their money now, and how is it going to now work? Because, yeah, as I said, I see too many broken pieces, and I guess that's the thing that I'm worried about, is that that's got to be in part of the solution into addressing effectively the fact that if you've got a bar, the bar ain't going to be selling what you used to sell. So what are you going to do now, and how are we going to put that back together so that the turnover matches the wages, it matches the rent, which, you know, like as I said, it's broken. So I'm worried.
I think there's a macro question there for maybe Mr. Artup, perhaps.
Was there a question, a clear one?
Well, look, I'm really just saying, like, are any of these types of things being addressed? Do you know what I mean? Like, we've kind of like looked at, you know, changing alcohol restriction legislation, but if they're not drinking it, it's kind of like, well, why are we bothering? And then we're looking at other legislation. I mean, I don't think it's a legislative issue, is what I'm trying to say. I actually think it's a buyer behaviour issue, and we've got to help these people address that profound change, because it has changed everything about how they make money. It's a little bit like having a petrol station, and now you've only got, you know, 45% of cars are now, you know, needing petrol. What are we going to do about your model? Your model has to change to address the change of the consumer behaviour. And we have exactly the same issue here, and we're not, I want to see that being spoken about, but we're not seeing it, and that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I think through this process we'll have to look at the data and work with the operators to really understand what the changing consumer trends are, because they are changing all the time. So I think Michael Rodriguez, when he's here, he spoke about you need to have the data and be aware of what those changes of all sorts of consumer trends are that happen rapidly to make sure that your industry is adaptive. So it's about trying to build in some sort of resilience to our operators and our venues and our clubs and pubs to see whether they can change their business model to meet changing consumer demand. So that'll be part of the education process that we go through of some of this stuff.
It's just that all that didn't say that, is my point. Because I'm thinking more in terms of what is going to be, what are you going to sell? Because it's not going to be the same model anymore. It's not the same product. It's not the size or numbers of product. We've got less people. They are now a different type of person. We heard at the function I did attend that they had to bring in 2 or 3 times the number of bands to get the same number of people, and now suddenly their numbers were mismatched because they weren't actually making what they needed to actually pay for the entertainment. So it's profoundly broken, which is what I'm trying to say, and I'm just worried that we really have to hit that hard, and as I said, if we're picking up and learning, that's great, but I'm just seeing there's more change here than probably we're actually necessarily addressing. That's what I'm worried about.
There's some comments there to take on board. Yeah. No, thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. Councillor Dutta.
It's just question time, is it?
Yeah, just.
So let me just ask one question,
sure.
And not make comments. With regards to the statistics, it is very interesting and encouraging. You know, when I read the statistics, it's absolutely brilliant, I think. And the question for me is, are these statistics reliable, are they accurate, or is there some corruption in the statistics in the way it was gathered?
I guess, well, we know that they were gathered by another organisation, but I might put that to you, Nick.
I think it's, through you, Chair, I think it's fair to say that they're accurate. I guess there's always some assumptions and some challenges with any data set. I think, as Alderman Zuko pointed out, the fact that it is turnover data and not sort of full kind of profitability makes it there's some gaps in the data that we do have. But I guess also picking up on Alderman Bloomfield's comments, we gather monthly data that we get through CommBank IQ and circulate to elected members every month, and that data shows changes in consumer behaviour. So we do have all sorts of different data that we draw upon to be able to make sort of recommendations about some of the activities that we could and should facilitate. Because the spend data that we have doesn't show any real change in spend patterns across the city over a period of time. It shows consumers making conscious choices around what they want to spend it on, whether it's shopping or retail, maybe as opposed to pubs, clubs and taverns and things like that. So there's real changes in consumer behaviour as things like cost of living challenges bite, I think. So there's those sorts of challenges, but that's all that sort of data that we have to bring together to actually work on what some of those sorts of solutions might be.
Just a follow-up question, Chair. So with regards to profitability, is it possible to get that data?
Not through that particular source, no.
And from nowhere?
That'd have to be something that we'd have to work with industry specifically on if they were willing to share that
So
data.
they're not readily available because it's an individual organisation.
Yeah, I mean, the closest thing to that would be being able to work it out at a value-added level, I suppose, wouldn't it? Yeah, at an industry sort of value-added level, because that brings in a range of different expenses.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Dutto. Councillor Harvey, do you have any questions?
I do, yeah. I'll broach them as questions rather than statements, so I'll use my inflection anyway. So I'm just interested in the arts and culture side of the nighttime economy. Drinking culture versus doing stuff culture. So just a bit of a list I've just prepared. The theatre, concerts, choirs and singing, which we're having at the moment, exercise. I know there's one place that's really popular, until 9:30 at night, where people are always hanging out. The night sky, dark skies approach, stargazing, aurora watching. These are things that all occur in night. Night tours, exhibitions, and what time's the nighttime economy happen? Is it like all night? Is it expected to go to early hours of the morning? Or is 9:30 at night part of the nighttime economy, or it's still part of the evening economy?
Yeah, correct. So the nighttime economy is 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. and without wanting to overcomplicate it, there's some economic development type teams around Australia that are focusing on different parts of the nighttime economy. Like the morning economy is a huge part of that economic contribution at the moment. People that attend cafes and things like that first thing in the morning is still considered part of the nighttime economy. One sector that we haven't probably encapsulated in the work that we've done so far that is an enormous contributor to the nighttime economy is the health sector. There's a lot of health workers that operate all night, so there's all sorts of different sectors that we could factor into it.
But the stay home economy versus the go out and do stuff economy, I'd like that to encompass all of these other options for going out at evening to do interesting stuff, not just drinking and going to bars and eating at restaurants, because a lot of people can't afford to do that necessarily. But what are all the other options that are free, that are cheap, that are entertaining, and not just supporting one aspect of the nighttime economy? Because I think that's important. So what do old people or older people do overnight time? What are their options? Where are the sing-songs and the nighttime bingo parlour, opportunities, or I don't know, just other things to do of an evening rather than sit home and watch the TV. So I'd love to have a big piece on that, not just how we can entice people to go out and spend money in bars or expensive meals, but
I totally agree, Councillor Harvey, and I guess that was part of the commentary around diversity of options. Some of the feedback from industry was there is a lack of diversity in the options that's currently available, and a lot of it is centred around restaurants and drinking culture and things like that. So being able to provide a greater diversity of options is a big part of being able to develop the nighttime economy.
And that deeper culture, I know my colleague over here is in a choir. What's the choir economy, throughout Hobart? I've met so many people who sing in choirs that I never knew could sing, that sang. So there's a big sector of Hobart that actually likes singing. So how does that get built into this?
I don't know, I'm not sure whether we can go through sector by sector here, Councillor Harvey. It sounds to me like that's good feedback.
Do you have any questions? Here's my questions and my challenges for this project, and I don't get many shots to do these things.
I'm just not 100% certain staff can actually answer that sort of specific question like that, but I do suspect they're going to look at building it in.
And it's all for no reason.
It's great feedback. It needs to be factored in, and council provides great support to diverse events like Festival of Voices and things like that, which have a lot of those sorts of opportunities built into them. So
I'd like that. Anyway, okay.
Taken on board.
Yes.
Fabulous, thank you. Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the report's good. Good to have the update. Obviously, there's been a bit of misinformation, mischief-making, misunderstandings around this whole topic for a while. So I think it's good to have good to sort of touch base about it and provide the facts on what staff have been doing. Yeah, I think that pop-up question was a strange misunderstanding, because my understanding that came from a Mercury story that talked about pop-up, and they used the word venues, but I think in the council report that had signed off on the nighttime economy, the nighttime, what are they called? The Live Music Australia office, that described what the Live Music Australia office had done in other cities, in other council areas, and they'd done pop-up venues in other places. But when someone called me about it, I said, look, my understanding is that it hasn't been designed yet, and the idea would be to support existing venues with musicians sort of popping up, helping musicians, new musicians, or events with young musicians in existing venues, but that it was still. So sometimes these things can sort of snowball, and people, you need to kind of correct the record, because some misinformation can sort of, and misunderstandings can just sort of, get spread around, and that's unfortunate. I think in your report here, the item 3.7 is really interesting, where it says when turnover is considered against employee numbers, so that's per 10,000 employees, which says a fairer comparison. Hobart is ranked second.
That's correct, out of 88 local government areas that were part of that report. Second in Australia.
Second for turnover per 10,000 employees.
Because when we compare to Brisbane, which is obviously a much larger economy and many more businesses, when you compare it per 10,000 employees, we're the second largest.
That's
in
amazing.
Australia.
Yeah, well, that's amazing.
Only behind Byron Shire.
Yeah. Byron.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the venues closing last week, there's been a lot of discussion around that, and that was incredibly sad for those businesses. But I do think there's a lot of good things happening. Doesn't mean that that there aren't challenges for every business. It's not just nighttime businesses, and I think businesses generally in Hobart, and the cost of living crisis is a challenge.
Can I just remind the members that we're actually in a question phase here, and we have the public gallery waiting. Can we just do questions? I'll come back around for contributions, but it was pretty clear that we do questions now for the staff while they're at the table.
Okay. Have no questions.
Oh, great. Okay, Deputy Lord Mayor.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Councillor Kitsos.
I do have some questions. I was wondering whether moving the Argyle Street car park to 24 hours has been part of this discussion.
Through you, Chair. So there hasn't been any sort of specific comments from industry about Argyle Street car park, but safer transport and parking options is 100% something that's been brought up. So it would very much feed into that work around the, extending the opening hours of the car parks.
Yeah, I mean, I do think looking at 24-hour car parking that we can offer in the city makes sense to me, to sit side by side. Nighttime economy. Also, the at-home culture that was referenced in the report. Was there, what's the comparison that people are making between the at-home culture and cost of living? Is this just another term for cost of living crisis that we're seeing come out?
I think, people are still spending money, I guess, is what we're hearing, is that rather than going out to buy a meal, people are ordering it via Uber Eats and staying home and watching a movie on Netflix or something to that effect, rather than going to the theatre or to the movies or going to a restaurant. And that's, I guess, what we're hearing is that that's the biggest competition to the nighttime economy that there is convincing people to get out and about and experience something, whether it's a choir or whether it's whatever it might be. It's easier and I guess more affordable, I guess, is the perception, that it's just do that from your couch.
Is cost of living factoring into these discussions?
Not across what sorts of conversations they're having in other local government areas, but definitely, as I touched on before, the spend data, from my interpretation of it, is that cost of living is impacting the choices people are making, because we're still seeing the same spend levels they're just choosing to spend them on different things as opposed to, you know, going out and experiencing a restaurant or whatever it might be.
Yeah, okay. I think it's important for me that with the feedback that we provide is around what's the scope for council. So the other thing that crossed my mind was, have we thought about doing a night rider bus somewhere to, you know, given our weather and safety issues, you know, we talk about health workers being out that time of night, people getting home from the cinema or the, you know, the theatre. Is that something that we could look at doing that's not quite in state government? Yeah, that's more in our court than theirs.
I think any of those sorts of options can and should be
I'm
on the
not
table,
sure
just
arguing
depends
that
on-
public transport's more in our bailiwick than the state government's though.
But a night rider bus that was council funded, is that?
Well, that's a
is that
separate thing.
possibility?
Yeah. Well, again, everything's a possibility. I guess it needs to. I think would need to be examined. But and again, Metro and the state government would need to be considered as part of that.
Just one other point about what's in scope for this week. You mentioned the question around the 24-hour operation of the car parks. So we are looking at that in terms of what the break even might be to get to a point where we can do that. Obviously, the changes to the future state of car parking may bring down some of those costs, but growth in the nighttime economy may also, you know, build that case for 24-hour operation of the car parks.
Great, thanks.
Great, thank you, Councillor Kitsos. Councillor Posselt.
Nothing from me, Chair.
Nothing from you. Look, just because this has been a little bit of a hot topic in the last week or two, I am going to ask if any members of the public have questions. And if you have questions based on this topic, you're welcome to stand up and ask them of the staff. No questions from the public gallery. All right, we'll move on to contributions. I might start on this end and go back around the other way. Contributions on this topic, if you have, Councillor Posselt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll be really brief. Obviously, this is a very complex team. We all know it's very complicated, and it's there's a lot of things that are outside of our control, as we saw with the nighttime economy presentation. Particularly, there's longitudinal, long-term things like precincts, changing planning stuff, and I think that there's appetite. Speaking to the guys that operate in what was once the West End, they're pretty keen to work with staff. To try and facilitate a new West End precinct. But getting these entertainment precincts out, as you said, before we really lean into densifying the city, I think that would make a whole lot of sense. So that I would really encourage us to work on that as a priority. I know it's probably a 5 to 10 year horizon in reality, but that's okay. It's got to be done. And the other stuff is like, you know, cost of living crisis, everyone's tightening their belt, nighttime safety. So again, I think that maybe we can get a bit of a feel for safety. I mean, we had 2 deaths in the water last year, I think it was, in the last 18 months, people falling into the water or being pushed in and drowning. And these are actually things that we should be taking on board and considering. I don't know what Tasport's response was to those events. But whether it's lighting, we've got our new safety officer program, we've got whether or not we need to upgrade CCTV, but safety is a big element of it. But I think that all things considered, we're heading in the right direction. We've got a big kind of plan, if we will, and we're just stepping off. So I'm sure you guys will come back to us with heaps more. But just keep going and look at what we're not unique. Look at what everyone else is doing around the country, and then make it Hobart's own, and we'll be fine. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Councillor Posselt. Councillor Kitsos, do you have a contribution?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I think the report is really heartening. It shows that we're actually doing really well in this space, much better than the media would have you believe. I mean, I think we have to look at what we as a council are responsible to deliver, and that's not to prop up individual businesses and make sure that they are successful. So I think arguably changing consumer patterns, cost of living, these are, you know, economic factors that all of us are dealing with across every level of council and across all businesses across our LGA. So the nighttime economy is no different. What can we do to make sure that they're supported? That's the question for me. So if it is opening the car park 24 hours, if it is making sure our CCTV network is providing safety elements for people, then the rest is on the businesses to figure out how they're going to bring customers through the door. I think some of the initiatives that are offered are really helpful to keep people out in the streets, and funding the arts and cultural programs like we do, like we've just seen a really successful Dark Mona, we've just seen a really successful Festival of Voices. I think these are the things that actually get people out. I think mucking around with Franco's, I can see both sides of it. You know, maybe people would be out anyway on a Friday, but also it's a pretty particular thing that also gets people out on a Friday. And from being there, one of the big demographics that are there are families with young children, because the children can run around, and you're not going to take that particular vibe necessarily into some of our establishments that we have around the place as well. So it could be that that's actually driving more economy on a Friday rather than taking from it. So I think we just have to be a little bit careful getting too involved with those kind of dynamics. But I think it's all heading in the right direction. I'd love to see some encouraging initiatives like a night rider bus. If we could get Metro to run more services, that would be ideal, but I think that's a bit of an uphill sort of battle. But it all looks like it's going pretty well. I mean, the statistics for second out of 88 LGAs is pretty impressive, really. So let's keep doing what we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Kitsos. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I think Councillor Kitsos actually summed up pretty much everything I was going to say. So thank you for that. I suppose all I'll add is just something that she's already reiterated. It's really wonderful. I mean, second is pretty great. And it's really wonderful, and I think we're doing some really great work here in Hobart specifically. I'd like to maybe even look at it broader than the CBD, because, you know, suburbs are also places where nighttime economies can occur, and if we're talking about suburbs and people getting out of their homes, maybe even just walking down the road to something, that's a really good idea, and to look at those different options as well. We've got some really great precincts, and we've done some really wonderful work in different precincts as well, like Manor Valley and Newtown. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, just some of the observations from the discussion and the work to date. I think the events that you've run so far, the two events, the initial roundtable last year, was it, and then the bigger event with the Nighttime Economy Commissioners, I think, you know, I think they were great. You, from my observation, you had a very broad. You invited a lot of people, and we should keep building up our mailing list. So we've always got a really good network of people to invite to those sort of things. But I think our business newsletter and the mailing list is just at a level that it probably hasn't ever been since I've been on council, in terms of that business news you send out and Hello Hobart. So I think your communication is great. I also think it's really important to always have a fairly broad invitation group, and not just get not only listen to representative industry bodies, because often they're representative of a smaller cohort that are, that pay the membership fees, that have a particular formula. One of the things I noticed about the event at the Odeon was there was artists, and there were women running just one little venue on their own, and you don't get that talking necessarily to the big industry groups that have got a particular membership. And I think the interesting outcomes come when you bring together the diversity of voices, not just we've always done it like this and these are our particular problems. I think that mix of perspectives is going to get the best results for us as program and regulators and decision makers. We have to really draw in a broad range of things, because I think some of those new events like the Francos that we're going to, we do need to think about the broad range of audiences. I also notice the Nighttime Economy Commissioners did talk about appealing right across the age range, and I noticed one of the nightclubs is offering a afternoon delight, they're calling it, nightclub, where they're opening at 2 o'clock and going till 5 o'clock, and playing a lot of 70s and 80s music, and they're selling out all the time because they're appealing to a group of people who don't want to go out late at night but still like the idea of dancing in a nightclub. So there's lots of creative ways, and you do need that creative thinking. You can't get too boxed in by a very particular type of thinking. You know, the transport is a really vexed issue for us. I don't think we could afford a night rider bus unless we were servicing just our own municipality, like offering sort of up to the Mount Stewarts and the Mount Nelsons and the. But if we start trying to do it to Greater Hobart, where maybe people, it just you know, the cost of that would be beyond our budget, I think. But it's always something we've got to keep talking with the state government about extending those bus hours. And it's not just, again, night time, because when we think about, one of the things the commissioners said that I thought was really interesting was that I think his office is now called the 24-hour economy, and he's got as much focus on the ability for restaurants to stay open late is limited by the fact that the whole restaurant staff need to get home and they've got to get to the last bus. And so, you know, that's in a big city like Sydney where there is actually late night buses, but that cost for staff to get home late at night, but also for nurses to start their first shift. And I understand some of our buses arrive into the city like half an hour after the first shifts at the Royal Hobart Hospital. So we do need to think about transport. I was actually in the Argyle Street car park with a friend who parked there, and we went out the other night and we got there at 9:30 because it is open till 10 p.m. now. And we got there at 9:30 and the place was absolutely cleared out. Like, it just didn't seem to be, but maybe that's again through promotion that we need to show people that these car parks are open till 10. I mean, that was only till 10, but that would presumably help with some people. But yeah, I think all really good work, and I thought the Nighttime Economy Commissioners had so many light bulb moments for a lot of people there. The at-home economy, I think, was a really, I think everyone knew about it, but the fact that they articulated so well what a challenge it was, the importance of thinking about workers, the importance of thinking about 24 hours, and having they were very complimentary, that they felt Hobart had a very strong identity as to what it was good at. But yeah, I think anything that there's learnings and sharing of information will help us do the work, the amazing work that you guys do. It's ultimately the work of your teams that are really doing the work, so thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Harvey.
I don't have anything additional to add. I think it's been covered really well the last 4 speakers or so I'm happy to move on.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. I want to make 5 observations, even though these points have been made, but I just want to reinforce them. Point number 1, I think unfortunately there has been a lot of negative information out there, and it's time for us as council, based on the data that we have, this is positive, I think it's good information that we need to publicize and we need to share with the community, otherwise it just leaves in this room and others don't know the statistics and the facts. And I think that's something that we need to do as a council, to provide that information. Point number 2, I think the point was well made by Councillor Harvey, and I've thought of this quite often, because people who are in my age bracket don't want to go out. We're past the stage when we used to. There are some of my friends who are Muslims and they don't go out for drinks and things. There are so many others, and I intermingled yesterday with 6 different small-sized cafe owners, from Malaysia, Chinese, Indonesian, Indian, and Pakistani. We were talking about how to do things, and the interesting thing it's the diversity. So what we need to also do, it's not just the drinking aspect of music night thing, but it's the diversity of the night economy, taking into account, the arts economy, the cultural economy, and there's so many other parts of the economy that we need to take on. Point number 3, I think the point has well made, the localization. I think that's where we need to start something as well. So instead of coming into the city, I think, the local suburbs will be another way we can encourage as a council. Point number 4, I think car parking is also an important one, and I don't know, maybe it's winter, that's why it wasn't full of people, but something we can think about extending the hours. I don't know if it's going to be midnight, but look at these things. I think these are practical ways of helping people. And finally, if we can work together, point number 5, I know I've heard liquor license is the problem, and I'm now working with a particular cafe that's having this difficulty because it's a state government issuing of license. So if we can work together with the state government and local councils, bringing these practical realities and see how we can lessen the red tape. And take 6 weeks if you want to order, if you want to get a license, and then you can't open it and have a cafe or restaurant on your own unless you as an owner have to do that particular course. So it's quite a long road to go down. So if you can work together and lessen the load and the red tape, I think that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dutta. Alderman Bloomfield.
I had a few things. One was lighting. I think we talked about lighting a while ago. I know that lighting will help change behaviour because areas or pathways that are lit or well lit help with feeling of safety and also guide people to go to the right areas. The other thing is too, I know everyone's been talking about how great the numbers are at 3.3, but keep in mind that we're talking about a 15-year run there, 15 years, all right? An average growth of 15 years to get to 44.6 is actually only about 2.37 growth on average. It's actually a very slow growth. The other thing is too, we don't normally count business numbers. That's just how many ABNs are in existence. It's not really how many storefronts exist. It's just, in fact, turnover of businesses will actually jump that number as well, as people are slow to, they'll jump in and set up an ABN and start running, but they'll be quite slow closing down the older ones. So churn will actually also do that. So I don't think 3.3.1 is really anything to be useful for us. And employment, with only 20.7, you can imagine if this is still your same 15-year run, you're talking, what, 1.5% or something like that? It's a very, very low growth. So I'm not really happy that we've been given numbers that have a 15-year gap, and then, of course, anything looks great over 15 years, but we should be looking at what happened in the last 3 to 5 years, and we've not got that data. We've got a 15-year spread. And turnover, also, once again, 42.3, which is well below what the CPI would be. So it means that we've actually got an industry that's shrinking, but it looks like it's growing because we've done it over 15 years. So I'd be a bit concerned about that. And the other thing is too, that if we've actually got a number of businesses, in fact, I do a lot with liquidators and I do a lot of work rescuing people post-administration, and those numbers are bobbing up quite immensely. There's a lot of people in a lot of trouble, not just obviously retail as far as restaurants and cafes. They are quite high up on the list for being in trouble. So obviously there are other areas like builders, as you also know, but I would never use turnover as my basis, because you can have all sorts of things in turnover and be a really poor operator and not get it right, or have an issue, have a large legal fee, not get it right. So it's not something I would normally use, but I'm also very much appreciative that it's probably the only spec we actually have, because knowing how much profit someone makes, you'll never find out. No one's ever going to give that to you. So we really need to be looking at how people are actually functioning, and more importantly, seeing who's actually open, who's closed, what their hours look like. People who are spotty with their opening hours are in trouble. People who can't pay their bills are in trouble. People who can't pay their rates are in trouble. We probably need to use different indicators to actually ascertain how people are actually functioning. So as I said, it's like I'm not real happy seeing a 15-year spread and being given numbers that look like that, because this whole room has gone 44, looks brilliant. Actually, it's not when you look at it's 15 years. Not at all. And then you apply CPI, which I haven't even worked out what that was over 15 years, but I can promise you it's a lot higher than 42.3. So we've got a bit of a problem with potential and actual here.
Thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I take a pretty simplistic view to this stuff, to be honest. I believe that I could synthesise it down basically to how I see council as well, in some very sort of simple principles, basically around the council doesn't compete, like we don't facilitate competition with the private market. I also took on board the points in that other email about Franco and things like that, and think that's a valid point. So I don't think we should be competing with the private sector. The council's role is to basically provide the infrastructure to enable the nighttime economy to thrive, whether that's the footpaths that things happen on, or the parking that people access, 24/7 parking, yes, and to be responsive when requests come through, planning considerations, and also to bear in mind how sort of commentary can impact on our reputation. One of the examples that jumps out at me was, you know, the television screens down at Salamanca in the sports bar. There was debate however long ago around, council might want to take down the sports screens outside whatever the sports bar one is at Salamanca, where the TVs are. So don't compete, provide the infrastructure, be responsive and cooperative, and bring the rates down. That's what I think the council's role is in the nighttime economy. I don't have any fondness for seeing elaborate documents with action plans. We're going to activate this and we're going to do this and do that. I just really think that it comes down to those fundamentals, which is where I believe the council should be in the background and an enabler, not inserting itself in sort of micro actions, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Alderman Zuko.
Chair, firstly, I'd like to thank you on the manner that you're chairing the meeting this evening. It's very similar to the manner I was taught at chair meetings, and ironically, I was criticised when I was doing it most recently.
I do think
I commend.
Thank you, Alderman Zuko. On these big issues, I think it's wise to go around and
thank
give
you very
everybody a
much.
chance.
There's been statements about negative information. Negative information only comes forward when, and I've been advocating for quite a long time, that we need to engage with the stakeholders, and in particular the stakeholder owners and property owners when we're going out for consultation. I was contacted by a vast number of people from the industry, the major industry players, and individual small businesses and businesses right across the city. I would understand why, after 50 years of being in the industry, I've run nightclubs, I've run baths, I've run restaurants. So people think I'm only a restaurateur, but maybe one day someone should do my bio and see what I've actually done over the 50 years of being in hospitality. And I'm not trying to push my barrow, but it would have been nice as an elected member who has been in the industry 50 years for someone to come and speak to me and ask me my views and opinions. That didn't happen, that's fine. And I just want to also clarify to people in regards to the reference group and the meeting with the CEO. All I did was facilitate it. I did not attend. Is that correct, CEO?
Correct.
And I even emailed the CEO to say it's inappropriate if I attend that meeting because the industry wants to speak to you, and I specifically did so because I didn't want to be influencing in any way or shape or form a meeting, and in particular where it's about the CEO finding out from the industry. I've also been in contact with a number of music groups as well. So it's not just about the hospitality industry, it's musicians. I'm in regular contact with a group that represents about 10 or 12 bands across the city. They're all interlocked with and know each other and all that. And I've been working with them as well. I want to make this point about the 24-hour Argyle Street car park. I've made this reference before, and I'll make it again. Waste of time, waste of money. Why? 3 minutes around the corner, there's a car park that's open 24/7 now. And I would say, and I'm waiting for these figures because I've actually put these figures in under request to get the figures for the Argyle Street car park. I've been promised they'll be coming very shortly for me to do an analysis. I think it's totally ridiculous that we're going to go out and we've got a 24-hour car park and we want to open ours, and I would love to know what the cost factor association per hour would be for us to operate a car park 24/7 when there's one open there 24/7. Look, I think that's where we as a council should be working with our existing businesses and saying, wait a minute, we want car parking open 24/7. We've got a car park next door to you. How can work in such a manner that people know there's a 24-hour car park in the smack centre of our city, 3 minutes walk from each other. See, that's where we as a council need to be working with our businesses. So at the end of the day, I'll look at it this way. If we decide to open up a 24-hour car park, or whatever car park at whatever time, I'd love to know, I'm waiting for these figures to know our bottom line at the end of the day and what we have to charge, what the private business charges. We're doing each other an injustice because we're not going to fill ours and they're not filling theirs. So please, we're all thinking about something that looks good but isn't. And I've got to say this, when I do my mentoring for people in the hospitality industry, when I go and speak to people who want to open up a cafe, and I keep on reminding them, and I said, don't look at how busy that cafe is. Look at what their bottom line is. And I actually spoke to a young girl the other day who wants to open up a cafe, and I explained to her very, very, very importantly, what you've got to understand is it's how much dollars per hour you are making in that cafe. And cafes, straight cafes, are the hardest businesses unless you're selling 150 to 200 coffees a day. So if you're selling 50 coffees a day, I assure you, as a straight cafe, you're going to struggle. I mentioned the music industry. Look, councils do, and actually there was a slide before I was going to ask you to put it up. It's about what the actual nighttime economy was. You had it pinpointed there. It wasn't just about bars. It wasn't just about restaurants. You had a series of aspects of what the nighttime economy is. It is broad. It is very, very broad. It includes events and everything else that goes on. Councils can assist. Whether we like it or whether we don't, we are the ones that determine the rate. We are the ones that determine the rent of that particular establishment. If our rates are high, it means that the landlord has to pass those fees across to the tenant. So we do play a role. We play a role with regulatory fees. We play a role with outdoor dining fees, and the list goes on. So we do play a component and a massive role in the bottom line of any business across the city. So we need to understand those businesses. And lastly, in regards to the profitability and turnover, I would suggest that you sit down with maybe Anita or Steve at the THA, because my understanding, I'm not going to think, my understanding is they do actually speak to a number of operators around the place who provide their bottom line. That's where they determine how the percentage factors are of the bottom line a business needs to operate, or the average that they're making. I know when I was a member of the organisation, I'm no longer a member. When I was in the industry heavily, we used to get all these figures to understand where we need to be positioned in our bottom line, because I had those figures. And just a point in regards to the pop-ups. I want to make this point. If the media has made the wrong call, I didn't see the next day that we fixed the problem. So if the media has made the wrong call on any issue, whether it's pop-ups, whether it's something else, I think it's up to us to go out the next day and say, no, this is incorrect, or whatever have you. Now, I get a lot of media releases coming through from the council in regards to different things. I haven't yet to see a media release to say that. Okay, so there's a two-sided aspect here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Zirko, and Councillor Kelly, thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few things. Nighttime economy, fully appreciate it's more than just hotels, cinemas and other things like that. It's made up of a lot of things. However, that they are perhaps at the core of what the bulk of the industry is about. And if we look at hotels, I mean, we've actually got 10 venues, not 7, there's 10 venues now boarded up, closed in Hobart. You've got, on top of the 7, you've got the Brisbane Hotel, which has been years closed, smashed glass, graffiti, terrible looking site. Duke of Wellington, which has tried and open, shut. And the Duke of Wellington, Brisbane and the Ocean Child. And secondly, I'll say about the Ocean Child, for any elected member to blame the council, which has been happening lately on social media, for that closing is an absolute disgrace, and we've got to keep that sort of behaviour out of the press. It's just really bad for us to be blamed for that because of a planning application that was just not acceptable. So that's what I'm saying about that. So if we get down to, if we acknowledge that those venues I mentioned before are sort of at the core of our nighttime economy, with those 10 venues now closed, really, to think that we're doing a great job and everything's good, I'm a bit staggered here. And I mentioned this too when we had 3 closed before. I said, look, the writing is on the wall here. I'm worried, and I did operate the hotel down the road here, but I still own and in partnership with the operators and have a big say in what happens with the operation of the actual survival of the hotel, with maintenance and all those and extensions and programming ahead. I'm 2 of the most busy venues in Hobart. I know exactly what works there and doesn't, and I've had a lot of experience for the last 25 years in the industry. The State Cinema is the biggest single entertainment venue in Hobart. 250,000 paid admissions a year. Every day of the year, open from 9:30am to 11:30 at night, 7 days a week. It had the bar there, it had the cafe, coffee shop, it had the cinema, and we did a lot of social work as well with talks, book launches and all that sort of stuff. I do have a pretty good understanding of the whole industry. I've never blurted about it. That's the way, not once in 25 years has anyone knocked on my door and said, can we sit down and have a conversation and a bit of a talk about what you might think. Not once, I'm going to say it again, not once in 25 years. I just think we've got to reach out, and I know the venue owners at the Crescent and Hope Manga haven't been as well. It's one thing to say we've ticked a box by speaking to HT, Hospitality Tasmania, and they do a good job and they do cover, and that's good that we do that, but how hard is it really for us to send out a questionnaire and an email to the not only the owners, but the operators, primarily the leaseholders, and the owners, which are just as important because they have a big say. It's not really that hard. I just don't see that core. It's a bit of a hard yard to do, but we've got all this information on. It's all there in the rates. It's not really that hard. And I'd just like to see that more granular sort of approach to speaking to the people at the coalface. You know, that's where all the really good information is. And I just don't think that really is being done really deeply enough. Pubs, to say to pubs, it's been vilified here at the table tonight, just places that serve alcohol. The pubs that I own and these guys operate, they provide food, music, poetry readings, quiz nights, they're family friendly, and they do a lot of other community events and all that. So it's not just someone's got a shingle on the wall saying they're a pub and then to be tonight vilified because it's just all about alcohol. I mean, and then to offer, people singing and all that, and that's great, we do all that, and we've got Festival of Voices, love it. It doesn't put much money into the economy. Let's do more for free events and all that. Is that really going to make much money for the economy? It's good to have them, and it's nice, but it's not at the core of what we're here to discuss tonight. I'm really, really deeply worried that we don't get it. The beds are burning with these hotels, and there's more to come. Let me tell you right now, it's struggle street out there. If we think that, we can quote all these examples, number 2 or number 10 or whatever, nice to have these statistics, and in some cases we can glean some information from it. But to, pat ourselves on the back and say, opening an ice cream shop is going to be the saviour of Hobart CBD and the area, sorry, to me, that just does not cut it. Pop-up venues, nice to have a talk about that, and I fully commend officers for coming up with ideas. And I used to say similar stuff, let's come up with 10 ideas, and I'm going to tell you now that only probably 1 or 2 might get up. That is part of the process. We shouldn't beat up officers or anyone else with ideas that don't happen. I have a real issue with that. The more we look at reasonably and learn from that, the better. So I'm not here to carp anyone for trying, but as long as we learn from that, we discuss that and move forward from that. So, look, the real only way we can do immediate relief, we can come up with all these hocus-pocus ways of doing stuff. It's bloody hard for council. I'm not blaming council for the collapse of the nighttime economy at all. We can't, it's not fair to do that. But if you really come down to it, it comes to the rates. You know, that's our first port of call. We can make substantial difference to industries like this. We've got the ability to pull the levers, yet I can sit here and debate hotels, accommodation, pubs. Well, it's easy for them. We can do 10, 20%, it's been suggested before, increases on that. Already on a very loaded base rate we charge per capita. I don't know. I'm super alarmed about it. I don't rest easy with the way the nighttime economy is going. And it's on the back of Mona, which does a fantastic job. We get a lot of this accolades. The ripple effect of that for the economy and the mainland perception of Hobart, which is good. It's absolutely brilliant. I fully endorse and support the excellent work the council does and identifies with Mona, but I just don't think we can hang our hat too much on that one port of call there. Because at the end of the day, and as Lee Carmichael said himself once, Mona's Dark Mofo's got a shelf life. We'll pack up its tent and go one day, and that's just the way of the world. It's not a criticism once again, but I'd just like to reinforce that, you know, let's not get too deep into all this getting other people in from the mainland. Yeah, well, that's probably not a bad idea to get an idea, but you've got these venues in Hobart that know intimately what the story is. And we're going to support, they're the venues, the bricks and mortar, they're playing, they've got the staff, they've got everything there. They're the first port of call I think we should be doing support, whether it be bands and all that sort of stuff, and speak to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Well, thank you, everybody. That was a great debate. I think we've spent over an hour on this, and I think the staff have got an awful lot of input from us all, which is the point of what we're doing here tonight. I might just make a short contribution myself. I really appreciated Councillor Harvey bringing up the choir economy, because there are an enormous amount of them, and there are an enormous amount of people in them. They're big, big things, and ultimately they practice weekly or fortnightly in the city somewhere usually, and then they'll put on a show where they charge quite a bit of money to come and see, and the event will bring in thousands. So they are big events, and it often gets forgotten, I think. I would like to echo Alderman Zuko on just finding out about what the utilisation rate is for Marketplace at night before we, as part of the work we're doing into looking at Argyle Street. I think that's probably a good point. It is a good point. But that'll do me, I think. I think all the points have been made. It's been an excellent debate. Can I have someone to move the motion just to receive and note the report? Alderman Zuko. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? That's passed unanimously. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Now, moving on. We have items for workshopping. We have I will remind elected members that no decisions will be made in a workshop. So the first one of these tonight is the Health and Wellbeing Strategy. I invite the Director of Community and Economic Development to introduce the item and make a presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Changing gears a little bit. So tonight this item is about the preparation of a health and wellbeing strategy for Hobart. So you may be aware the annual plan initiative for last year was to complete this strategy. And what I'm going to go through tonight, just as quick as I can, is just talk about the new state legislation that requires council to play more actively in the space of health and wellbeing and how we're going to do that. A bit about what the data is saying about Hobart's health and wellbeing problems that we aim to address through this strategy or approach. Our existing priorities in health and wellbeing, we already do a lot of stuff in this space. So I'll talk about what we're doing already, introduce a framework that I'll talk through called Move, Connect and Purpose, and using this concept that we're borrowing from around the world called Blue Zones to frame that up, and then the approach for that and some examples and then delivery going forward. So I'll go through that tonight as quickly as I can. So just starting with the changes to the Act, why we've developed this strategy or approach to health and wellbeing. So recently, the Legislative Council passed new legislation that's going through at the moment, requiring councils and changes to the Local Government Act for, which you can see there on the right to play, for councils to have a stronger responsibility to play in health and wellbeing. So this is the what's going through at the moment, is that part of the Local Government Act that is within our strategic plan and our community strategic plans, councils are to identify community wellbeing priorities and specific strategies for addressing it. So it's now becoming a requirement of local government to play in this space, similar to what other states have done. So New South Wales, Victoria has a Public Health and Wellbeing Act, a standalone act that focuses on this and talks very specifically about what councils have to do. New South Wales has it in the integrated planning and reporting frameworks, a lot of requirements around health and wellbeing, and Queensland set up a government enterprise called Health and Wellbeing Queensland that does this type of work on behalf of the government and has lots of funding. So it's bringing Tasmania into line with other states in terms of having councils having a role in health and wellbeing. So that's a bit of the background. So the existing policy context, what's already happening in this space. The state government's just recently put out, late last year, put out 2 strategies, different departments, one from Department of Health and one from Premier and Cabinet around health and wellbeing. One called the Health Revolution, which is a 20-year preventive health strategy that's just been completed, and then another department put out the Health and Wellbeing Framework. So both these pieces of work have consulted with, I think one of them has consulted with 5,000 Tasmanians, the other's consulted with about 1,600 Tasmanians on themes and issues around health and wellbeing. And it gives a lot of data and statewide consultation in this space to sort of inform and get a picture of some of the policy landscape, but also issues for Hobart specifically. So the other strategy was the Healthy Tas strategy, which was released in 2022, which is coming to completion now. That strategy actually had funding for councils that we applied for several years ago. We used it to set up a health and wellbeing data dashboard that we now have. But these 2 more recent strategies don't have funding associated with it for community groups or councils at this stage, but they do foreshadow that in the future there may be funding for communities and councils to play in this space. But they sort of set policy frameworks for the state government particularly to play in this space that help guide some of our thinking. There's also national strategies that sort of guide federal government investment and policy in this space that's relevant to getting a picture. But that's that part. So what other councils have done, whilst I said this legislation is coming in now, some other councils in Tasmania have already produced health and wellbeing strategies. So a bunch of those councils there on the right there cover pages of their health and wellbeing strategies that have been done, some going back almost 15 years. But if you look at those strategies that other councils have done, what they include in them when you actually get right down to it is actions, strategies and initiatives that are in our list of strategies there on the left. So our strategic plan, our City for All, our Climate Ready, our transport strategy and other strategies. Embedded in them are things that other councils, for example, will pull out into their standalone health and wellbeing strategy. So you could say we're already doing a lot of stuff in this space, we just haven't pulled it together into a document that's called the Hobart Health and Wellbeing Strategy. So what we're proposing to do as part of this work is just not reinvent the wheel or not do any new work, but just sort of articulate in some sort of document very briefly that we do a lot of activities and work already in health and wellbeing that's quite effective. So to put that into perspective of what we do, last year in our budget process, these are all council programs here that you could argue that are in health and wellbeing related, either stuff we do in natural environments, parks and reserves, walking tracks to get people active, our access advisory groups, our community programs, they all have some connection or enhance community health and wellbeing more directly than other things we do across council. You could argue that council does a lot more things that lift wellbeing, but these areas here of the organisation probably more focused around getting health and wellbeing outcomes for the community. So if you put a dollar value around that last year, which we did, we had a look at across operational and capital expenditure, it came to about $21 million last year. So it's just proving the point that we already spend and invest a lot in health and wellbeing every single year, in addition to the other strategies that describe that. So, So what's the data saying about our health and wellbeing? Essentially, Hobartians are healthier than Tasmanians. That's the key upshot of that. But compared to the national average, one of the areas that we have a higher incidence of poor health outcomes is around mental health. So we have slightly higher mental health than the Australian average. And we're slightly above in dementia and Alzheimer's than the national average, only slightly, but close to the national average. But mental health, we definitely stand out in terms of a national comparison. And then some of the bottom one there around comorbidities, we have a slightly higher incidence of comorbidities of disease in our community compared to the national average, similar to the Tasmanian average as well. But the other thing we have is a population that's ageing faster than elsewhere, which brings its own health challenges with that hyperaging. So a hyperaging population is when 20% of your population is aged over 65. So that's coming and getting more serious for Hobart. So we're getting older, but not necessarily healthier, according to the statistics. So it's painting a very general picture of some of the health areas we should focus on. So what are our priorities? If you look at all those documents that I put up previously, existing documents across a whole range of areas, if you look at those and do a bit of analysis, the top two things that come out of all those that have been identified through previous consultation in that work is low levels of physical activity, one area, and poor mental health. So it's telling us at those strategies what the data is also saying, that poor mental health, social isolation and loneliness, particularly among older people, is a standout issue in our community, in addition to low levels of physical activity. And then below that, from 3 to 7, are the other priorities in order of how common they are. So what we're suggesting is that for this piece of work, there's lots of things that we could bite off, but we're saying focus on those top two things around physical activity and poor mental health being the focuses of this approach that we'll go through in a moment. But obviously keep doing all the other work that we're already doing across the organisation. So the question is, what type of a framework, other community-based frameworks out there that we could adopt for our community that drive health and wellbeing outcomes across the community. So the one that we've looked at that's quite popular, it's been used by other cities around the world, and that's becoming well known as the concept of blue zones. And these are basically regions around the world where people live significantly longer, healthier lives, often reaching the age of 100 and beyond due to the unique lifestyle environmental factors in those communities. So a book that came out in 2012 by Dan Buettner went to 5 places around the world where it identified 9 key factors in those places where there's lots of happy older people living up to close to 100, and not just living older but living healthier and happier lives, that had 9 environmental factors that drove and that were responsible for that longevity, but also improved living standards in those places. So those 9 factors, we haven't adopted all 9, we've condensed them down into 4 for our strategy to create a framework. And they are pretty common sense ones really. Moving, eating, connection, which is a big part of mental health, and also developing a purpose. So the framework's very, very simple, that it picks off, it's really essentially about working with organisations that are already working in this space and promoting the work they're doing to our community. So not just local organisations, but national organisations that have informational programs that we can promote through existing organisations in our communities. So they are, for example, in each one of those areas up there at the moment, organisations that we already know that are doing stuff in each one of those 4 themes of movement. For example, 10,000 Steps program, Park Run, St Luke's doing things in that space. In the eating category, or nutrition, Live Eat Well Tasmania, a big organisation doing work. For example, Oz Harvest, they came and saw us the other day looking, and they've got a nutrition program that they want us to promote to our community, so etc, etc. Looking at the Connect area, things like mental health days, run clubs, men's sheds. Big one there is around bush care groups, which have a big demonstrated impact on connection and mental health by people being engaged in bush care groups, which council does a lot of in terms of volunteering. And then purpose, which is a different area around identifying a purpose in organisations that are involved in helping people do that. So the interesting thing was when we spoke to St Luke's after we'd advanced this sort of framework and looked at it, St Luke's had used the exact 3 of these 4 concepts identical to the ones we had identified in their Healthiest Island campaign. So, and they also drew upon the Blue Zone concept in developing their investment and also their campaign to be the healthiest island in the world. So it was encouraging that we were aligned with that. So, so the approach, what we'll do, so essentially, first part is around building strategic partnerships. So working with all those organisations out there. Felicity's team has already developed this about 100 different organisations in those 4 areas that are doing stuff in our community or with the potential to do more work. St Luke's did exactly the same approach. They've actually got 400 different organisations that they work, and they have a wellness hub and facilities across the state where they invite community health partners into their environment to run programs every single day of the week for people to come in and do free movement, eating, nutrition and other programs within their venue here in Hobart. Next one, promoting those programs. So very simply, if there's an organisation doing something, that a credible organisation that's within those areas, we can work with them to promote calls to action to our community based on information from those partners, using different mediums. So it could be social media and other corporate communication methods to promote the organisation that we decide to partner with. Measuring the impact, so a big emphasis will be on measuring over time the impact on community health indicators from that work. But that's, after we've done that, the next part will be, which is very a generic 4-themed approach, would be to develop a clearer theory of change of what will improve health in our community. So St Luke's have done this at the moment. They've said, well, their theory of change is that they've picked cohort from age from 20 to 40, so younger age people, and they're trying to encourage and intervene there because if they can get people healthier younger in different that age group, that'll go on to have a big impact later in life. So, but they've also commented on their theory of change that the groups and the events that they hold in their wellness hub, the big gap is men attending this. So primarily 80% female people that are attending their programs at their wellness hubs across those 4 themes. So maybe you can get a bigger impact if you have programs that encourage men to attend some of those events that they have through that. So as we go, we'll work with the community to get an understanding of where the gaps are, but where we can get the biggest uplift in health and wellbeing by getting a better understanding of where the problems may be, impact. So how this will be resourced, there will be no additional increase or request on staff. So in Felicity's area, we have a health promotions coordinator who will do a lot of that work. And then in the economic development team, there's a business engagement officer whose part of their jobs is to engage with the community and business and groups. So they'll be involved in building those partnerships, promoting those programs, holding sort of any relevant forums that we need to promote involvement in the partnerships, and working on it over time. So the approach, what it will be, is a focus on prevention of sickness, not curing disease. So be about staying and becoming healthy, not medical diagnosis or referrals. We're saying out of anything that we promote won't be clinically, it won't require medical advice. It'll be promoting programs to stay healthy. It will also focus on promoting personal action as opposed to looking at issues with the health system or getting into that space of advocacy. And engage with health and wellness experts as opposed to medical-led professionals, and be promoting local resources that are already in the community as opposed to, and best practice knowledge as opposed to trying to establish new programs. So just finishing a couple of examples. For example, we haven't spoken to the Heart Foundation yet, but they're an organisation everybody would know, and they have programs out there around getting a personal walking program plan implemented. So that could be an example of something you promote to your community to get involved in or run a campaign around, for example. The right there is the federal government's dietary guidelines. So they're simple information, fact-based, peer-reviewed information to promote around consumption of fats, alcohol and sugar, for example, that are credible. St Luke's, which I've spoken about, they do a lot of it, so very aligned with the work they're doing. It's the Healthiest Island project. We've had several meetings of them where everything we're doing is sort of very, very aligned and similar. Obviously, getting the community active around events as they come up to get health challenges. For example, the 10,000 Steps program, they have corporate programs and corporate facilitators to get organisations or workplaces involved in movement. Eat Well Tasmania program, which is currently operating. And there's all obviously the stuff that we do already. So the Healthy Hobart program, which we do, that we lead and invest in. Over time, we could look at how we repurpose or reuse that program to, as we develop a theory of change around our community. DCAC, obviously, a big facility there with lots of health programs. Still gardening program, etc., things that we already do that we can promote and get involved in to get outcomes. And just finally, delivering the strategy. This is the last slide. So just summarise there, focus on the Move, Eat, Connect theme within our current resources. Developed a communications plan that the comms area is put together and how we will go out and communicate involvement in the strategy. Build the network of health and wellbeing partners around that, so that at an operational level there'll be a database and mailing list of people involved in this space that we'll communicate with. And they're, as required by legislation, incorporate reporting on outcomes of this work into our relevant strategic community planning and reporting processes and requirements. Reporting regularly to the Place and Wellbeing Committee, and we'll produce some sort of a document that sort of a scorecard of figures and metrics around health and wellbeing that we will put out as part of all that promotes all the other things we do as an organisation as well. So that's really it.
Thank you for that. All right, as this item's not quite the same as the last one, I'm happy to take indications from who wants to speak. We've got Councillor Posselt and Alderman Bloomfield.
Thanks, Chair. I will be as quick as I can. I've certainly seen the Blue Zones documentary or series, and if you've not seen it, it's cracker, worth a look, definitely. Very interesting. I guess one thing that cropped up in your slide that I immediately went, whoop, don't like that, and it might just be a language thing. The slide that you brought up with what it is and what it isn't, and it had not medical led, like that was a big hoist a red flag up for me. So maybe the better language would be expert led, because health and wellness, the doctors refer to the health and wellness industry as being full of woo and not evidence based. And I think that we should be doing, we really should be doing evidence based practice. Whether that comes from physiotherapists or people in the wellness industry, but doctors equally have a place in this, as with the Heart Foundation. Have we involved TALC at all, the Tasmanian Active Living Coalition? Might be worth reaching out to them and getting their input into the strategy. That's led by Rebecca Harrison of the THS and Verity Cleland at Menzies. There's a couple of our staff members that sit on it, Dan Vidal's on it, I'm on it, but it's a statewide group and definitely worth looking at. One of the pillars, I love that you focused on the physical and mental health first 2 points. I think that's really, really good. I've seen some more recent data that suggests that, in fact, people in their 30s and 40s are more lonely and more isolated than the elderly. I don't know if that pertains, that research does not pertain to Hobart, but it's a broad pattern in Australia. It would be interesting to know, and if we focus, I feel like it's important to focus on the older cohort and getting them connected, but just making sure that we don't forget the younger cohorts as well. That are feeling increasingly isolated because people don't go out anymore. It is harder to meet people if you aren't connected. And the final thing I'll say for now, two other things actually. Mental health we know mental health in Tasmania is strongly linked to seasonal affective disorder, so winter depression. And winter depression, seasonal affective disorder has strong evidence associated with low vitamin D levels. So whatever this strategy does, we need to be providing places out of the wind where people can congregate in the sun as part of their daily activities in and around our city. So I think that needs to be part of that. Solar access is super important. If we actually want to tackle mental health in this state, then providing people a place where they can sit down, have a coffee, have a wine, whatever it is, or exercise out of the elements, but still get the vitamin D. The final component was the downshift pillar, which is one of the 9 that you've kind of like wrapped into move, I think, which is the idea for anyone listening that there's a moment where you stop in your day. It's built into your day. It's whether or not it's a happy hour or a siesta or a daily exercise routine, meditation, that type of thing. I do think that council can play a role in that. So the Healthy Hobart program is really good, but it often focuses on families, it focuses on weekend stuff, outside of work hour stuff. I think there's a real opportunity for us to be facilitating like lunchtime stuff. Lunchtime runs in the city, waves of runners that go up the rivulet path, or lunchtime yoga that you can sign up to. You can get workplaces in and run and work with the private sector to do that, but to help communicate, because I feel run clubs are really popular. Hobart Knockoffs is a really popular run club based out of Room for a Pony. Even I feel daunted about the idea of going. It's like 200 people that I don't know. It's got a real culture to it, and I wouldn't even know where to start. If we had these types of things facilitated by the city, you could find a city officer and be like, oh Ben, you know, like I'm new here, and you know, Ben can introduce you around the room. It kind of breaks down some of those barriers, and also I think things like knockoffs are quite demographic specific and doesn't invite people from lower socioeconomic areas or different areas to be involved. It's all the same type of person, whereas I think things promoted and run by the city actually breaks that barrier down really well. But I'm happy to take more, like have more comments with you offline, because I know we don't have time tonight to go through that. Obviously very passionate, but thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councillor Potselt. Alderman Bloomfield.
I think we've had the conversation before. I had a real interest, and I have for probably 10, 15 years, regarding looking at low carb choices and introducing that into our culture, I suppose, like vegetarianism has been into cafe menus and so forth. So you know how you can go to a restaurant and it's almost expected these days that you'll have a vegetarian option. It'd be great to see like a keto or low carb option, mostly because it's just as much as they know and identify that moving is important. Eating is actually had been identified, if you remember from earlier research I'd actually presented to council table, is actually more effective at actually reducing weight and overall health. Unfortunately, eating is also directly correlated to poverty, and of course we aren't known for being one of the wealthiest states in the country, which means that we're already behind the eight ball. So anything that actually can give better choices and start to create that conversation so it's more obvious and easy would be a great step forward. I note that I've had friends that have stage 4 cancer, been told to eat organic, told to eat low carb, and then really found they couldn't go out with their friends anymore because there was just nowhere they could obviously easily get the types of food stuff that they actually needed to eat to maintain the diet that they were requiring. And overall, anyway, I just feel that if we want to be serious about it, then we actually need to give some serious outcomes via this type of thing. This is a change that I think we could do simply because, look, it would require some low budget advertising and support, but it's not actually anything that couldn't be supplied by another organisation who's like-minded and so forth. Live Eat probably already has part of their menu that would be adapted to this kind of thing and could even help lead our charge. But I really think that is something that if we're dead serious about changing the outcomes and creating a blue zone, then we actually have to get serious about looking at the sugar load and carbohydrate load in our community and understand that people only make those choices because A, it's what they're used to, and B, it's what they can afford. When you look at the way diet and available foodstuffs goes, high carbohydrate foods are typically the foods that actually store longer and are cheaper, like flour and sugar and so forth, all the highest carbohydrate things, and also the staples in your cupboard. It's very hard to get low carb choices that actually are equally stable and low cost and so forth. So you know, gardening obviously runs really well with that as well. So it's not like it's not going to be on its own, but I do feel that it's something that if we could incorporate somewhere, I'd be really excited to see it. I mean, I wanted to see over the last 4 years that perhaps we had some kind of promotion festival that actually promoted low carb living and so forth, but I never kind of got anywhere through the council to do that. But if I could do something basic like that through here, that would be huge and life changing. As I said, it's really just saying, could we encourage all the restaurants and cafes and so forth to offer a low carb choice or keto choice on their menu, and then have it promoted perhaps through Hello Hobart, because it's all low cost, all nice and easy, but it actually is one step forward on that screen.
Thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. We have the Lord Mayor next.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Just on the gardening side of things, because I guess I'm keen for us not to sort of massively branch into whole new areas, given this, strategy needs to stay contained. But we've done the good work with still gardening. But I'm just wondering, sometimes when I meet people from still gardening, they're not just in City of Hobart, they're all over the place. Is that because we're required to work in Greater Hobart, or we're just very generous, or...
Not sure of the funding.
Okay.
It's funded through the federal government, so I assume that we have a fairly open
Funded
policy
to go, yeah,
for a broader reach than just Hobart.
Right. Because I did also wonder in terms of facilitating people's contact. I mean, I think Still Gardening's an amazing program, but we don't seem to be doing much in the way of community gardens. And I know much smaller councils have quite a lot of them and employ a part-time coordinator to sort of, get people organised and enthusiastic about joining that. So I don't know whether we're thinking in that space at all. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was, again, the Bush Kids and the Healthy Hobart are great, but I sort of think maybe for a lot of people, I've heard that the Hobart Walking Club is really hard to get into, and you have to kind of, give your firstborn child away to join or something, but I mean, not literally, but it's, I wonder whether we should sort of not just do Bush Kids, but also potentially just provide opportunities for people to, go do the Knocklofty walk who might not have done it before, or maybe through our Healthy Hobart program, which... Yeah, I mean, I think it's good, but the diversity, as I think Councillor Posselt mentioned, having a diversity of ideas there is worth us just, rather than a whole new approach, just expanding that a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, look, I wanted to focus on the bush care stuff for a second, because we've actually got data for this one, and we can see what the outcome's been. So 9 of the 16 bush care groups belong to Landcare, and I've grabbed the community impact report for Hobart, and we do this for all 29 councils around the country. So in Hobart, those 9 groups have 287 members. They held 98 events in the last year. They contributed 3,490 hours of volunteer work, and they saved the council $167,555 with the work they did. So there's something that we can actually hang our hat on and say, this is a good program, how do we expand this program? And if the other 6 groups were part of Landcare, we could provide the data for those as well. And what that comes down to, why do people get involved? What we learned was 100% of people engaged are interested in the environmental stewardship and impact they have by being part of the bush care program in Hobart. The community contribution and connection they create, 89% of people said that's why they do it, so that's another good stat. The wellbeing and active lifestyle component, 78% said that's why they do bush care, because of the wellbeing, active lifestyle, and the lowest rate was 67% who said local action and learning. So for me, this is a project and a program that's been established for probably 25 years. It rarely gets any recognition. It has the best barbecues of any of the volunteer groups in the council, and it's something that could be expanded with a little bit more energy put into it, because it's kind of sat here for a long time. It gets a CPI increase every year. The budget's not massive, but the amount of work that's created by these people engaging in these activities has a real benefit to council. If we didn't have it, that's $157,000 worth of activity, worth of bush care that wouldn't occur, plus the other 6 groups that aren't part of the data here. So I'm hoping that is something that we recognise as an established and beneficial program that could be increased with not much effort. So that was this year's Landcare Impact Report for Hobart. It would have been sent through to the bush care area. So I don't know how that was sent through, but council has received that report, like all 29 councils have. So there you go. And I've got to get off now, so thanks for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you. Look, I think these mandates are really tricky for us because they're sort of all-encompassing, and we do a lot of really good stuff in this space anyway. For me, I think the number one thing is that we actually don't need health advice, that we just stay well out of that space. I don't think we should be recommending what health advice should be. But I think, like, as you're incredibly well aware, there's so many organisations that are already doing this work, and so many of them are underfunded, and so many of them are really well set up to have people come to them to do what they do best. So I think would find it difficult if I was in your shoes to make sure that you've spoken to all of them or included all of them, because although they're not for profits in the same space, they sometimes work quite in isolation. So I've worked for the Stroke Foundation, but the Stroke Foundation doesn't necessarily talk to the Health Foundation, it doesn't talk to MS, it doesn't talk. And so each one is actually offering their own lifestyle choice projects, because obviously lifestyle factors are the number one risk factor for all of those things. But we've actually got a lot of these in the CBD in Hobart that people can actually go to. They've got the printed resources, they've got the programs, it's all evidence-based. That's where you go for your advice, and we just link people up. So I think that's a really smart approach, and then we just continue to do what we're doing, which is we know if people eat well and move, they're going to be happier and healthier. And so I think expanding programs that we already have is a no-brainer. But I'm not quite sure how we make sure that we're all inclusive of all of those not-for-profits that are doing such a good job in their particular spaces, and making sure that we're sending people in those directions, because it's kind of website overload in some ways. There's so many different things you can do. I was even part of a study that was looking at the Stroke Riskometer app, which was an evidence-based app that would feed you information about your stroke risk and how much exercise and eating that you needed to do, and was linked in with, it was an incredible piece of work. But the health app space is and also an exclusive space that changes constantly, and so it's hard for us to actually say this is the place that you need to go. For 12 months it might change, but those not-for-profits are well linked into what they are, and each have their own app that recommends how to reduce the risk factors for those sorts of preventative health measures that you're trying to achieve here. So I think somehow working with all of them is the way to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Kitsos. Are there any further contributions? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. This is actually similar to the nighttime economy one for this, but because I don't see us getting involved in this space down into detail as council's role. I think that council's role around the wellbeing of the community comes back to that basic stuff like providing the infrastructure so that the people have the footpaths to walk on, recreational bike paths, facilities like the athletic centre, the aquatic centre, make sure we're maintaining our facilities like badminton, things like that. So the hard infrastructure and the hard facilities, making sure that people have the sort of lifestyles that enable them to look after themselves, whether it's not stuck in traffic, so traffic flow, making sure that our rates are low and or in the right ballpark so that people can afford to other wellbeing exercise activities, buying whatever food is healthy for them. I've been critical before, and I maintain that I don't believe at all that council should be offering yoga classes or offering coordinating running groups. I don't think that's where our ratepayer money should be spent, because it's competing with the private sector. I do, and I just don't believe that that's council's role. I know that we have an obligation to pull together a wellbeing strategy, and I would be very comfortable with a wellbeing strategy including those things around the infrastructure we provide that enables the community and the facilities, and how we support people having their own individual responsibility for their lifestyles. I remember I've had earlier conversations with Felicity back in the early, Healthy Hobart days, and I'm definitely supportive of the council as a information sharing platform to share not NGO messages that are already out there. We need to make sure we don't cross into sort of private endorsements, like Live Eat was on the, I don't believe we need a very careful and consistent policy if we're going to be promoting private enterprise rather than NGOs like Seek and Live Eat. I think we need to not fall into that space because it's either all or none when it comes to private. I do have a question. I think at the start, and that slide where you brought up, the reason I feel the way I do is because so much in this space is already happening at federal government, at state government, and I hate the duplication. It just drives me nuts. And the documents, I would much rather we didn't develop those bloody documents and just put the rates down accordingly. And so with this strategy that we need to do to meet our legislation, can you just clarify for me, is it bringing together the existing stuff that we were already doing, and that slide was great where it had the ways we already contributed, or are we looking to add more to it?
My reading, or the reading of the legislation, is that in our strategic planning documents we've got to say what are our priorities, health priorities, and what are we doing about it. So what we're saying in this piece of work is there's the priorities around mental health and movement are the issues that we're agreeing upon, and what we're doing about it is connecting our community with existing resources, and then we'll measure that in addition to everything we already do in terms of parks and facilities and the centres. So
yeah, my input summarised is that I would believe we can input into those priorities through the hard infrastructure and facilities, and by keeping affordable rates so that people recognise that, not being hands-on with service delivery. And basically that cross-pollination, but not duplicating, facilitating what private sector can do.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo those recent comments. I just don't think we should get down to the granular of this. I mean, we provide first-class facilities with our recreational grounds, Lochloth Pier, Domain, at Wellington and other places as well. And I just think, concentrating getting the basics right and let, sure, promote what we've got, but it shouldn't be for us to do running things and yoga, all those sort of things. It's just crazy to go down that road. There's a lot of people out there. Yeah, let's try and facilitate that and do that, but we've just got to continue to beat our drum and just say what a fantastic job we're doing with these first-class facilities, with the pool and the athletic track on top of that, as well as all these other places. Mental health's a bit of a concern. I take note of that. So let's not put our head in the sand about that either. So if we're going to focus on anything, let's really look at that. And that's not only young people who have that condition, of course, it can be anyone, but it's more the middle to later age people, I do believe, that they're so... And I think we too often just forget the people in the old person's homes and that. There's a lot we can do there. And whether it's, I mentioned before with the fantastic job that we did up at South Hobart with the community event there in the park at Wellesley Park a couple of weekends ago, which I thought was outstanding effort by the council. Trying to do that in locations that might be able to integrate with an old person's home nearby. I just think with this large amount of people we've got there in these facilities now, and it's getting bigger and bigger, we've got to really put a lens over that and focus, I think, a bit more on that than the young and fit and able-bodied persons. I mean, we're spending millions on bike tracks and doing everything for these sort of people. Let's look at this a bit more with marginalised element. I just don't see much put forward that's focused on elderly or people in old person's homes who rarely get out. It could be near right in the park next to some of these places, or in the street right near them. Get out and go and see them, promote it in, knock on their door and do that sort of thing. So I'd be steering us away from running stuff ourselves and just concentrating on the facilities and this mental health aspect as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Any further contributions? I might just speak quickly. I can understand the problems we've got with the passing of that legislation, which basically just said we have to do a strategic plan to identify community wellbeing priorities and to specify strategies for achieving outcomes. So it's a little bit more than just sort of ignoring it, unfortunately. But specifically, I'd just like to talk about still gardening, because I know someone who's a gardener in that program, and it is just as good for that person as it is for his clients, for want of a better word. He's an older guy as well. He gets a ton of pleasure and satisfaction out of that job. So I just think it's not just the houses they're visiting. We need to sort of think about the workforce of volunteers we've got in that program and some of the others and the benefits they're getting as well. I think they're probably good measurable results for us there. That brings us to an end of that item, I think. There's no vote required on this one because it is a workshop item. So we'll just move on to the next and final substantive item on the agenda, which is Christmas transport options. I'd just like to invite the Manager of City Transport, the Manager of Economic Development, there's a few of you here, the Director of Strategy and Regulatory Services and the Director of Community and Economic Development. I feel like someone's missing.
Ben's
gone.
Yeah, he'll be.
He's done. You're just going to sit next there. Okay. All right, so we have Mr Holiday and Mr Vidal. Okie doke. And time is ticking on, so we'll try and keep this as quick as we can. It's always seems to be the way with you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to Dan to run you all through the transport.
No dramas. Thank you. Thanks. We'll try and get through this reasonably quickly. But the purpose of tonight is just to genuinely sort of get your perspectives and context around some of our key Christmas transport discussions that we've been having. So yeah, I'll take you through some of the key ones. And then at the end, we're really keen, I'll take a lot of notes tonight, really keen to get everyone's perspectives around the table. And from there, we'll take it obviously to council, take it on board tonight. So,
can I just ask just to start with what the timeline is for sort of decision making on this? And,
so I'd like to bring this to council at the next meeting, so in a fortnight. Okay. Yeah, there's an imperative around getting back to the state government, so we do need to make a decision about this reasonably quickly.
All right.
Cool. So the objective is to unpack this at a high level. So what we're trying to do through all of, I guess, the Hobart Transport Strategy unpacks at a high order level, but it's to provide people with optionality that want to come into our city, and with a focus obviously around this around Christmas time. So we want to get as many people into the city, spending money, helping our traders. That's the headline for this. So it's genuinely how do we provide as many options as possible to get people into the city. It's not mentioned here, but it's really linked close to our action number 6 in our Hobart Transport Strategy, and I read that, which is to provide travel demand management strategies for events that ensure that disruption to the transport networks is well managed and aligned to the overarching themes of the strategy, i.e. when we've got something going on in our city, how do we provide options, management strategies to allow people to get into the strategy, and we'll go into some of those sort of conflating factors are shortly. So I'll just take you through some of the key ones, and the key ones obviously are park and ride, which we run, and also ferries. They're probably where we'll spend most of our time tonight. So historically around the park and ride, council's provided this in the past for a number of years. There was a big hiatus around COVID, but we resumed this back in 2024. What we've done last year is just for some data. So we provided a park and ride Christmas service between the 8th and the 24th of December. And we also provided additional service then from the 27th through to the Taste of Summer period. So while there was the event down on the waterfront, which also included the City of Hobart Yacht Race. So that was the period that was obviously a fair bit of activation around the waterfront. So what were the numbers? So through the 8th to the 24th, we saw a total of 3,000, just short of 3,100 people up and back. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more people heading back up as you're hopefully laden with lots and lots of shopping that you've spent all that time in the city. So you'll see that with both numbers there. There's more heading back on the buses themselves. So yeah, just short of 6,000 through those operating days through the Taste of Summer period, which is really encouraging as well. So just under double through that short period. So I guess what we want to bring tonight and to get your feedback, and we'll then ultimately take this for decision, is the council will continue with that park and ride at the cenotaph. We believe this is good value for money. We think this is good for both the pre-Christmas and the Christmas New Year period. We've got a standing offer with an operator at the moment, which our procurement people have entered into, which is good, that we can engage on an as per required basis, and that's with Cold River Coaches. So if council decides to continue with this offering, we'd use that offering with Cold River Coaches. I don't know the cost there, but last year that cost us think $24,000 for this. That's for both the pre-Christmas and the Taste of Summer period. So that's 24,000.
So do you have the split of the pre and post?
For this one, it was based on an as-day basis. So I think there were, if I go back,
I missed the date.
yeah. So I
It's
can't
like a
remember
quarter
what
of
the
one
numbers.
was probably.
So I think it was 13 or whatever the days up 3 and then 6 after. So it was a pro rata basis, if that makes sense. So it wasn't more expensive between
No.
Christmas and New Year. So yeah, we'll bring that to council. But yeah, get keen to hear your feedback. I'll go through the others, but yeah, keep that in mind as we consider your feedback. Getting on to ferries. So again, to assist traders, council provided some funding to the state government over the past 2 pre-Christmas periods, 24 and 25, to help promote the city, to get more people into the city, provide optionality into the city. In the first year, we provided 50,000. In the second year, last year, provided 85,000. That was to get a whole of day, all day service and into the evening peak as well, which was to try and promote that later shopping time as well. The campaign was called Sailing to the City, so I operated 13 days of additional sailings, and that was 11 extra weekday sailings per day. So we had operating all day as well as the later period as well. So the numbers, we saw, just 24,553, so 2,453 extra passengers on those additional sailings. And in addition to that, we touched base with the operator, and obviously it's hard to get because they're the existing services that they operate. They said there was an increase in those services as well. So what you're seeing there is maybe someone that couldn't, caught the normal 8 o'clock ferry, but because they had a meeting in town and wanted to do some shopping, they then got the 12 o'clock back.
Sorry to be, so there was nearly 2,500 extra passengers.
Correct.
For a cost of 85. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. In minimum, so we think there's more than that, but there was 2,453 on those additional sailings, yes.
On those additional sailings, for a cost of 85. Thank you.
That's like $335 a person. $34 a person.
34.
Yep.
$35 a person.
Yep.
How much is a normal ferry fee?
$0.
No. What I mean is, how much is it was 85,000 to get the sailings happening, is that what you're saying? We paid the provider 85,000, so it's cost us $35 a person to get them over.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, discussion. So, we did have significant inquiries around various stakeholders. So we ran it just between the 8th and the 24th. So we got significant inquiries around the Christmas New Year. So should we then operate it through that New Year's period? Noting that from our data, double of the patrons used the park and ride in that period than during the pre-Christmas period. So it's just food for thought and consideration. Now the other piece too is we've obviously got the Argyle Street, which you heard about last workshop. The Argyle Street works as part of the hospital, so that's going to be under strain. That facility, which is making us a little bit nervous, but we'll try to mitigate that as best we can. So we also want to provide, as I've noted in our action plan as part of our transport strategy, this is all sort of part of providing choice. This is numbers. Sorry, I've gone one too far. So there is a proposal. So this is up for discussion. So we're going to bring this to the table. So there is a proposal. The council could continue to provide the state government with funding to contract the ferry during December, and you could do it for either or. So through the pre-Christmas and or for the Christmas and New Year period. So council's contribution, we would say you'd want to have an upper limit because we're just going into negotiations with them. So 120,000 for both would be the upper limit. It's really important. This is our perspective too. We can't do this as an ongoing thing. This is not our core business, and I do note that we've obviously had discussions at council a number of times. What is council's responsibility versus what state government's responsibility? So if we were to do this, I guess our recommendation to council would this be at a one time only, and then asking the state government to, as they develop up their program for the additional ferry terminals, that would be something they consider ongoing.
So why would it jump up to that cost?
So previously it's been 85, and that's only for the pre. So it would be 120 would be for both the pre and for pre-Christmas. and for post-Christmas. So the quotes we got last time for post-Christmas was $25,000 to $30,000. So we didn't land that because
So that's more just for the Taste of Tasmania.
for the activation around the pre New Year's Eve period, Taste of Summer, Sydney, Hobart, all those sort of events.
So that costs $25,000.
About $25,000 to $30,000 depending on the service arrangement. So if you were to do that, there was an upper limit of 120,000, 90 for the pre-Christmas, 30 for that period. As part of, we had some queries from elected members to sort of explore some of the Christmas pageants specifically. We're only going to touch on it. You notice in the report we've sort of basically noted there's still a fair bit of work to do in this space, so we're not going to sort of unpack this in too much detail, but only to say that the future of the pageant arrangements we'll consider in 2027 in a bit more detail. The main reason is because we've got our future state of parking, there's actually not a whole lot we can do as far as flexibility, short of going back to charging what we charge now. We think there's a bit more of a nuanced approach that we might want to take. So before we go into that detail, we'd love to land that future state of parking. Do want to note though that we have had it in place since 1985 and that we do want to explore all sort of options around this. It's important though to note we have done some initial analysis around the day, on the day, how much additional funding, also spending are we seeing on the Christmas pageant to that day, and it's actually lower than the previous day. So on Thursday and Friday, it drops away on the Saturday of the pageant and then increases again on the Sunday. So that's worth noting, and we'll unpack that in a bit more detail. But again, we'll take that to council as we develop up or land the future state of parking, because that allows us, like I said, to be a bit more nuanced with our approach. So that's it. So that's what I want to present tonight. Like I said, I'm going to start taking a lot of notes, so watch me. I'll just be tie-banging, but really keen to hear everyone's perspectives, because we're not wedded. So we hear what you're saying. We're quite supportive of what you're saying broadly, but it is in the context of providing transport options as well. So really keen to hear what everyone's perspectives are.
All right, well, I'll open it up for debate, but I will just make the point that the Christmas pageant is off the table here. We're really not debating the Christmas pageant parking here. We're talking about Christmas period. So first up we have Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, $35 per person for an extra 2,500 people coming into Hobart is not value for money. I'm sorry, it's just absolutely not value for money. But now you're talking about 120,000, is that correct?
So what we would suggest would be the same. So it'd be 90,000, 85 to 90,000 for that period that we're comparing for last year. So if we can bring like for like, it'd be 90,000.
So if it's 90,000 like for like, it's going to be worse than 35. It'll probably be about 36, 37, 38, something like that very quickly. Look, and again, is public transport the responsibility of the state government, or is it our responsibility?
The state government.
So, see, this is what we do. We start getting involved in state government responsibilities, and all of a sudden, they like the fact that we're putting in money into state government responsibilities, and we end up with a can. I've seen this happen time and time again. You know, like, have we considered the other option? I don't know. We considered speaking to the Metro, putting more buses on. Have we?
Yeah, I mean, Park and Ride is obviously the other overlay, so we've done that. So
okay. Have we spoken to Metro about potentially getting more buses on, rather than paying $35 a head plus for a person to come on the ferry?
So probably just to understand too, the general subsidy that the state government pay for the ferry services is about that order, $30 to $35 per customer. That's the general service. So that what you're seeing is normal. What we're paying is what the government are paying through their $4 or $5 million that they spend a year on the service. So it comes down to it's an expensive form of public transport.
Yeah, but the point I'm getting at is, public transport is a state responsibility, right? I understand that we're referencing a period. Have we done an analysis on whether or not people are deciding to take the free ferry and not drive their car or do something else? Because there are all those things, and I'll look at it this way. If I was living somewhere near the ferry terminal, I'll be going, hey, this is good, right? You know, I'm gonna get it. Look, I honestly believe we need to go back to the. I'd rather be spending a bit more money and getting more bus services than underwriting. You know, even though that's an issue, I'd like to see that scenario as well, right? Because I think what we're doing here, you know, the state government's going to probably come back to us next year and say, oh, we would like you to underwrite the ferry services for Christmas year in year. Look, we're going down the path. We're going down a tunnel of ending up doing something because we've done it, because we've taken it over from the state government. I want to make this point. That's why youth are, and I'm a big supporter. I played a big role in it. But that's why youth are kept. That's why we ended up having street workers, because the state government dumped all that. We've got to stop just taking it over from the state government. I'm sorry. Look, you know, look. $35 a head plus doesn't work for me, sorry.
Thank you, Alderman Zuko. Next up we have Councillor Kitsos.
Sorry, put it into the pageant.
All right, Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Chair. We just talking about the ferries or also the Coal River bus coaches?
So, both.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to hear for both.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't bring a decision back to council. Clearly, it's $25,000 for more people. So it's a better value proposition. I think that's a pretty, it's an overwhelming, it's been a pretty strong and successful operation in the
But
park.
do you think there's room to expand that? Like either with the secondary parking, park and ride, like just talking off the top of my head, like down the Kingston way, that we bring people in from that area, or, because the parking obviously gets full up here as well. Is there a way to...
There is a sweet spot for locations. You've got to get, it's either a fair way out or very close to your end destination, and middle grounds often. So there is a whole lot of research and sort of analysis around that. Short answer is yes. I mean, there are other options potentially around the city, and we are starting to explore that as part of the pageant as far as sort of testing the waters.
I think it's an interesting discussion with this 120k on the table to sort of go, well, like that's a pretty chunky amount of money. What else could we be offering people to get into the CBD with that amount of money that's realistic and within scope of what we need to offer? I think it's like outrageous that the state government doesn't fund this stuff. I mean, if they're not going to support their capital city over peak time, then, you know, when are they going to do it? But equally, you know, we're walking that tightrope, aren't we, of saying, well, the CBD needs shoppers and we need to bring them in. So this is another way to bring them in, but it does seem like an expensive way to bring them in. The figures, the $34 per person, that's only based on last year's figures, is that right?
It's based on last year's figures, correct.
And we don't have a year prior to that?
Year prior was even worse value.
Okay.
But the service design wasn't as good, so at the last minute the state government ripped the middle of the day out of it, so it became an even harder proposition to sell there. So,
well, I think, like, you know, if you look at it, step back and look at it from a data collection kind of standpoint, that you would need to, you know, you're always talking about behaviour change when you're talking about public transport, that this would, and we've had free pageant parking since 1985. People know it's free. You know, it might just take more than 2 years for people to figure out that the ferries are there for Christmas shopping. So we could actually see that cost half this year and then quarter again the following year. But is that something we're prepared to roll the dice on?
It's certainly no, and that's a fair, best case scenario, that's what happens. You build a multi-year behaviour change. But yeah, it is a challenge because is that our responsibility? And that's the question. So I'm certainly supportive of these views, because I think that's something we need to consider.
What are the budgetary implications? Do we have this allocated in the budget?
We do have an allocation for this if required, yes.
Okay, so it is currently allocated in the budget. It is a successful strategy that brought in 2,500 people to shop in the CBD. You know, I think I'm really torn on it.
Me too.
I think it's, you know, I wouldn't want to see it explored forever, and like I said, it's outrageous that the state government doesn't do it, but I know what they'll say if we go and ask again, they'll just say no. So short of expanding our bus services to help another 2,500 people, I think it's so important that Taste is successful and City of Hobart is successful and our retailers thrive over Christmas. So I think it's likely money well spent, and that could well drop to less than $20 a person over that time potentially, but we won't know unless we conduct the trial, I guess. but I'll put some more thought into it.
So it needs to be understood that obviously once the ferry terminals are provided in Lindisfarne, Lord's Beach and Wilkinson's, that the service will need to be expanded, and it will be a state government delivered service. It wouldn't be one that the council would subsidise once that actually happens, because it's likely, again, if it was to expand further to, you know, the other suburbs, that it would get bigger take up. But it is, wherever it's run across Australia, it's more expensive. Dan can probably talk to this form of public transport than buses.
Yeah, okay. And timeline-wise, are we expecting the state government to take these extra ferry terminals on by next Christmas? Do you think that's...
No.
Best case the year after, I guess, yeah.
So by funding this year, we're almost preempting that we would then approve it again the following year as a stopgap until the state government will take it on, potentially. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next we have the Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Elliott is
sorry.
next. Oops, misread. You're up.
Through you, Chair, were the ferries free last year?
They were not. No, that came in February.
Yeah,
I think, because that's when the fuel crisis sort of blew on and they sort of made the decision. They were $1.40 cheap. But there has been, so if you say a 30% increase in, so and to be fair, we weren't collecting any of that fare revenue, so we're going to see so there's been a 30% increase in public transport uptake. That's across with the ferry as well.
Yeah.
So you would anticipate a 30% increase in those numbers.
Yeah.
So
for me, I'm not torn at all when it comes to the ferries. This is just not. And what stats do we have that we know that those 2,500 minimum, because you said there might be more on other trips? How do we know that they're actual shoppers and not just workers or?
Yeah, we don't. I mean, the only thing, so they're obviously outside of normal working hours. So
although 6, 10 and 7 probably isn't. You just finish work, go to the gym and then get ferry.
Yeah, a lot of them are in the middle of the day, so they're probably the least.
Okay,
patronised,
right.
But
We don't have the...
We don't,
no. So for me, no way to that. It just doesn't make sense. And I don't even think there's promising enough signs to even try it again for another year, and I don't want it to be a pattern of behaviour that we fall into. So definitely not for that. I thought, well, maybe we could use that money somewhere else, you know, whether it's like Shop Hobart and we do the bus out to Sorrel, Brighton, Kingborough, you know, from 9:30 till 3 or something. But I was like, oh no, we're still going to the same path of doing other people's jobs, and it's just not worth it. So big fat no to the ferries from my perspective. What I would love, having been someone that would drive over from the other side of the bridge, I would park. I loved when the Christmas shopping would come off because I would work in town, but I'd park at the Domain, park on the Cenotaph and walk in. And then the council went and changed it, so you couldn't do that, which really peed me off. So I would actually much prefer that the Cenotaph and the Domain restrictions be lifted, and that's commuters are encouraged to park there. So that the car parks, they're not therefore taking up the car parks. Because people that drive over, they're like me, they're ready to walk and are happy to do it, and they'll walk into town. And do we know, like with the Argyle Street and whatever else, what percentage of users are the ones that come in, you know, before 9, leave after 4 or 5? What percentage of fares in the car parks are those sort of day workers?
Yeah. It is. I think we do have some time of day figures, but to try and equate whether they're sort of, so we can make some extrapolations.
Yeah.
It is probably higher than we probably would like, and this is more a strategic parking question.
Yeah.
I think and it comes down to the purpose of those multi-storey car parks, and I think this is probably a conversation for another day, but it's not a bad question, because I think in an ideal world we want those car parks full of shoppers, people accessing appointments. We don't want all-day commuters parking in.
So let's just guesstimate that 20%, even if only 20% of Argyle is people that are coming in to work, and they're prepared to pay the massive thing because they've got to go somewhere after work, they've got to do A, B and C, and they're on a good wicket and they can afford it. I would much rather those people, and there'll be a lot of those who are like, oh well, I'll pay $20 or $25 for Argyle Street, or I can park there and walk for free. I would rather us make the Domain and Cenotaph encourage the commuters there, and take those users, or encourage those users out of the multi-storey car parks, because there's no way I'm going to, or anyone I know, would actually park at the regatta, go and do a heap of shopping with a heap of crap and lug it onto the bus and then lug it back. I just wouldn't do it. I'd just go and pay the premium parking. I think the move to deter commuters from that spot is really backwards thinking. And I think we should encourage commuters to those locations because they will walk. Let's free up the off-street parking right in town for the shoppers, and no to the ferries.
Yeah, no, we could do that. That's fair. Thank you.
All right, on to the Lord Mayor this time.
Thank you. First question would be, have you got any new ideas for us?
In this space, yeah, it's a really tricky one because it's about trying. Yeah, and I'm honestly I'm sort of torn on this one because there is a benefit there potentially that you, as we were talking before, that you can unlock multi-year, but it's absolving the state government of their responsibility. And the challenge with public transport more broadly is, as we've noted lots of times, this is, you know, we've underfunded our public transport system for so many years, and it's meant that it's become the road of last resort. So we are trying, and there has been this push to try and encourage it again and sort of celebrate it again and offer more premium products and things like that, but it is a challenging thing.
Yeah.
So as far as us as council, short of advocating and building relationships, which we're trying to do, and yeah, it is a challenging thing.
Yeah, because I guess I'm a little bit disappointed that there isn't some fresh ideas, like maybe looking at what some other cities have done. I mean, there's a notice of motion that was unanimously passed on the books, not from this council, the council before, on a city loop bus service, which would probably cost about $120,000 a year to run, particularly if we, for example, partnered with UTAS, and they're going through Battery Point and Sandy Bay and out to Taroona these days, and we could add in Mount Nelson and Mount Stewart. Like, maybe we should be targeting some of that, giving some benefit to our own residents, so we're freeing up car parking spaces in the city for the residents that have to come in further afield. Like $120,000 is a lot of money, and I would rather we see whether we could do something really interesting with a sort of, going to offering our pensioners, you know, like, I guess they can catch a metro bus, but our metro services aren't great on Sundays, for example, like having a city bus loop that goes into the sort of deeper into our suburbs.
The challenge there is, there are services now, so they run pretty well. There's a bad rep on them, but they run fairly well, and it's free. So it's sort of, where's the latent demand unlock?
No, there's nothing after 6 in Tolman's to Mount Nelson. There's nothing on Sunday.
Yep.
There's nothing on Sunday to Mount Stewart, or like, it's pretty limited. Anyway, I just think Christmas, a lot of effort's going into Christmas, but what could we do? How about the activation of providing that kind of, you know, enhancement to our mobility services right throughout the year with that kind of budget? I was originally, when we subsidised the ferry, it was to bring people into Salamanca Market, because the state government only did Monday to Friday, and that sort of was like, that made sense, and it was a limited amount of money. But I think I think it's just getting it over the top to be doing 11 weekday services and stuff. There's no proof that these are shoppers. I mean, I'd rather maybe we focus on doing something different, like Sundays, you know, like, because people might go shopping on a Sunday, and just do some Sunday ferries and go back to the sort of Salamanca Market option, but it's got to be much reduced cost than that. That's just really a lot. I'm actually not that impressed really with the regatta grounds. I'm like, that's 182 people a day in the sort of lead up to Christmas, which is 60 people. Like, we do the same thing we do with bikes, that's 60 people in, 60 people out. That's not a lot of people. Like, what's the damage done to the lawns? How much does that cost? Have we got the full picture? What's the cost of putting up all the, I don't know how much staff time goes into it. Like, is it literally just that? Like, so, yeah, I mean, I guess we've always done the regatta ground, so we should probably do it. But I worry that that gets used by commuters, like, and then, yeah, is that then really what we're trying to do? Does that free up car parks in the city, or does that just free up sort of people parking around the neighbourhood streets in North Hobart and South Hobart stuff? I really don't know, but I understand that one's tricky. And yes, what else did I want to say? My concern with the ferry is that it is subsidising one side of the river. And I do feel like then how about the Glenorchy people? They're not getting anything. So that's a little bit of the challenges, isn't it, with how do we design a program that is fair? And that's why I thought, well, at least if we're doing something that maybe is Sundays, maybe it's the ferries, but maybe it's also something else on a Sunday for people coming from other parts of, whether that's free parking in some of our car parks or something, I don't know. But yeah, I did worry a little bit last year when I heard about the cost that the Clarence residents were getting something that the Glenorchy and the Kingborough residents weren't getting, in a sense, that it felt a little bit lopsided, so...
Just one sort of points to being a state government, that's the very reason why it is a state government responsibility, because you're trying
to... So it's not easy.
That's not an easy one.
So, but the only thing I can think of is, let's do something more significant for our own residents that sort of taps into or let's focus on one day and really make it. Let's ask our traders, what's your worst day? Where would you like the most sort of boost? And we do something that's sort of a little bit more packaged for people from wherever they're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Back to Alderman Zuko.
Yours before me.
Okay. And then we have Bloomfield.
And then I'll take it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been much discussed tonight, yeah. A bit the same old to me. $35 a head or more. You just about get an Uber in. You say to them, right, you go and get an Uber, we'll pay you. It'd be cheaper to do that. I agree too with some of the comments the Lord Mayor said about, these people at Eastern Shore, really, most of them would just go to Eastlands, I would imagine. Sure, we'll get a percentage off that here. How much does it cost to get a ferry over? $1.70?
$0 free.
It's free now, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know. I just think we've got to get something a bit fresher, something that's going to capture the imagination of the public. It might be a bit gimmicky, so what? And of those numbers too, we don't know. A lot of those numbers would probably still come anyway without who use that facility. So you can't say that all of those are not going to now come if we don't do that. A large percentage.
They're new they're different services, but yes, they would come in some other way.
Yeah,
potentially or redirect to.
I take it. Some may not.
We don't know.
That might be the tilting point for them to say, look, I'm going to come because I'm going to get this.
But they might come in. The key, the whole premise of this is they might come in and drive and take up the car space. So what we're trying to do is provide people with an option. So you can do that, or you can catch a ferry, or you can catch a bus. So that's the premise. But you're right; it's a very expensive way of delivering another option.
But we're between a rock and a hard place. I'd love to steer the state government down and say, bugger you, we're not doing this. It's clearly your issue. Rah 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 rah. But people at Hobart might suffer a bit here. It's all right for us to say that.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that is the root cause of the problem. And we just keep letting them go and go and go. They must be just sitting back laughing while we do this. And I don't know, it's a tough one. Easy for me to say all that. Yeah.
Just to assist my fellow elected member, an Uber from Town Hall to the terminal is $18 for one person, $15 for 4 people. To Clarence. I just did it, just did it just then. Yeah. I know different times are different prices, but you could go to an organisation like Uber and say, hey, listen, we want you to bring people over here and we'll make a deal with you. Like $15 for 4, that means is out of $35 we can bring, rather than $35 a person, we're bringing 8. I think this is one for the drawing board. I think we're better off going down the pathway of looking at other potential items. I respect the fact that the Lord Mayor has stated that she brought forward a motion about the thing, but there was one that came before that, many years prior to that. It's about peripheral parking. Similar concept, where you have peripheral. If we went down the pathway of putting out expressions of interest for peripheral parking, and I've got to say to you, just let everybody know that was released to the media today, right? Ironically, I'm going to speak about it now. Peripheral car parking, if we had one coming from the Eastern Shore, one coming, say, somewhere at Souths Point, one coming from over the river, because we originally were where the football stadium was going to be on that corner there. That was going to be a car park. That was going to be our peripheral car park for our CBD. The state government decided to can it. It was part of an agreement we had made with the state government. It was also going to assist the thing. But if you have the peripheral car parking, what the Lord Mayor has stated, and basically what I've been saying, part of the paying for the parking is you can subsidise the shuttle with that paid parking, where people pay for their parking on the shuttle, but it's also used for other people going around our city. Right? We've got to start thinking outside the square and all, like, again, I want to regurgitate one day, if I'm re-elected, is the Lord Mayor's proposal, my proposal, whack them all together, and we can deliver far better bang for buck. Because that's what I'm looking at here. I think we need to say to the state government, hey, it's your responsibility. We think, okay, look, we're happy to throw in 20 grand or something like that, but this $35 a head is totally ridiculous. I honestly can't support it. I'm sorry. Fine enough. As I said, I'd rather put more money into the pageant, other things, than, to me, that's just going to my wood heater and just throwing in $35 and $35 and $35. Solutions. You know what? I'll throw this one at you, and again, this is something that I've been meaning to do. You know what we're better off doing? Is going down the pathway of a program that people coming to the city and shop and spend X amount of dollars, we'll give them some voucher for something, I don't know. I'd rather see that, Anyway, I've said enough.
Thank you, Alderman Zeko. We have Alderman Bloomfield.
Okay, so with the ferry, the 35's a little bit intense, especially given the comparative with the Uber. I mean, you probably could get some pretty good media out doing the Uber. You're employing a heap of people, keeping the cars moving through the city, but we're not actually increasing parking. But the whole point of the ferry, I think, really wasn't entirely getting the people in. It was also getting people who don't normally do it to try it. It was also creating a habit and an experience that people go, every Christmas I get on the ferry. That's what I kind of saw with this, which is probably what you were seeing too. And I think that the point there is that we have to take a leap of faith and either go, we're going to keep on following that view that we are creating an experience, we are creating habits, we are getting people to have a go, and they will do things they're not used to doing at different times of the year, and Christmas is one. So it is possible. The thing that bugs me is that, how would they carry their shopping, and would they go all the way in the wharf? Because I don't know if I'd do that either. But there was another area that I was looking at that no one's brought up yet, and that was with the long-term parking and so forth in Argyle Street, Centrepoint and all them, because it is really high from memory, and I thought we did have some stats on long-term, and that it was something crazy, like up to 80% or something like that. It was really, really high, the long-term use of the 9-to-5ers in the park. It might not be as small as 20%, but I know it's actually not what we thought it was, and I remember being really disturbed by just the sheer volume of long-term park. So I thought, And I reckon there'll be modelling done on this already too. So I'd be curious to know what had been thought about this in the past. But what if we did something really different and said, why don't we, if you stay more than 5 or 6 hours, we're going to absolutely whack the hell out of the fee on you. Like, I don't know, double it like that, but make it really hard to want to stay more than 5 or 6 hours. So the people who are there doing 9 to 5 are going to either pay a huge premium, or they're going to go, you know what, I'm going to go regatta ground and do it for free. Now all of a sudden we've actually freed up all the people to kind of go into the short term. And if we'd made the short term cheaper, we've done 2 jobs. We've basically, if you want to misuse the big car parks for long term parking, pay a premium for that, and I really mean a hefty premium, and we'll use that premium to then subsidise the ones that are going to shift through after 2 or 3 hours and maybe make it back to 1.5 hours. The number of people who ask for the 1.5 hours freebie instead of the 1 is huge. So I don't know, if we could jiggle that around, I mean, I just wonder, could we change behaviour, particularly at Christmas time? We want the long-termers on the regatta grounds, we don't want them in the car parks. We want the people who have the big parcels to be closer in the car parks, but not on regatta. So could we look at that? I mean, look, I know that's just going to take a bit of modelling, but I reckon we could either make it break even, we could even probably do okay out of it, but I think that we'd probably get better bang for our buck, and I think that we'd probably have a lot of happier families who aren't dragging kids around so much difficulty. Because that's kind of what I thought. And I think with the ferries, it's funny, you know, we've had huge barneys in this council over policies and concepts for $25,000, and here we are with 120,000 and 80,000 on something that we all know is really expensive. So it's actually a bit of a head spin to kind of go, oh, but that one's okay. You know, it's hard to make that okay. So I suspect from tonight's discussion that it's probably not as favoured as probably we'd all like. I'm probably a bit more of a risk taker with it because I can see why. I do actually get what we're trying to do here, even though it really does my head in that I just think it's a colossal waste. Having said that, I would equally love if we could rejig the prices just for that same period with the long-term, short-term parking to get those long-termers who are abusing the system and get them onto the regatta grounds so that we actually maximise the bang for our buck for our shoppers and give the gift back to the shoppers of that free parking for 1.5 hours, give them the thing that they're actually asking for, to be honest. That's what I'd really like to do.
Thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. Do we have any other contributions from around the table? All right, I might just say a couple of things and then we will hopefully be done. It's a really difficult debate, this one. I'm not very happy about the cost of the ferries either because next to the buses, they look terrible. Like the bus is not a bad service. We're getting bang for buck there. We're bringing in thousands of people. We're keeping thousands of cars out of the CBD. But then again, taking away the ferry money will potentially remove several thousand shoppers or potentially add several thousand cars, things we don't want either. And it is Christmas and we do try to support our retailers as much as we can, and the Taste Festival and Sydney Hobart, all of the things that keep the wharf really vibrant. We're trying our best. So it's a hard one. I think where I'm landing on this is that I'd be okay doing it for 1 more year, and that my personal preference would be to say to the next council, you've got to make a decision on this. Either pull the plug now or face continuing subsidising the state government's intransigence forever. But I do feel it's a bit of a difficult one for us here now. You know, we haven't got a lot of time to go before we've got to make a call on it. There's a lot of other options that I think are too long term maybe for this particular year. So really, I guess like a lot of the others around the table, I'm quite torn on the ferries. I can see the benefit and I can see the cost, and the cost is horrendous for the amount of numbers that we're getting in. So saying that, what effect will the free year have on this free ferry, and will it still be in effect? I mean, who knows? But if it is still free, you'd have to think the numbers are going to go up.
It will be for this year. So
this year?
That's 30 June.
Yeah, so I would think that would have an upward lift. It's been 30% on the buses. There's no harm in saying it would be probably 20 or probably similar. Whether that's still, I mean, it just takes the price down to $28 though, or it doesn't drop it that much. So look, for this year, I would very hesitatingly support continuing it, but I'm really torn on it. It's a really hard one. Yeah, and I think I've seen that around the table from everybody here. So That's my take on it.
So just for clarity then, just so what we'll do is we'll put up in the report these options, and it's, again, it comes with...
No, we won't put an option up, we'll put a recommendation
Sorry,
up.
recommendation.
I think we've got a fairly good clear feedback.
That's great.
So.
It's been a good debate, again.
As far as the parking, is that something we should take on board?
Well, I think there's a lot that we need to unpack in terms of what's been provided tonight, so I think we'll take that information, we'll consider it, and then provide a report back. So.
Fantastic.
Thanks
Thank you,
very much.
guys. All right, we'll close that item. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
That moves us on to responses to questions without notice. There's no debate about this. I'll just invite an elected member to move the motion to receive the current one. Is that you, Mayor?
Moved.
So moved. All those in favour? All those against? That's unanimous. And we have questions without notice, I believe. Does anybody have a question, or Councillor Kitsos?
Thank you, Chair. Can we please get a summary of the rates that have been paid to us from the pubs that have recently been closed over the last 5 years, please?
Well, it is your confidential information, so I'll need to take advice in terms of whether and under what circumstance we can provide it. I certainly couldn't provide it without confidentiality around it, but we can certainly, I'll seek that through Lara.
Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Any other questions? Councillor Elliott?
I was to the CEO. I was wondering if you've given any more thought about moving this meeting to the chamber. The reasons predominantly is around it takes days for the audio to get up online, and there's no visual from a sort of safety point of view as well. And I just don't think it's helpful in terms of community access. So
No.
any thought to it?
We have, yeah. So we certainly want to do that full review of the whole governance arrangement. Whether this council does it or whether we do it as part of the new, it probably makes sense to do it as part of the new as to whether that council can say this is its preference. I mean, this council did it for a deliberate reason, but whether that still holds, whether that's still is important to the council. So
a next term thing?
Well, yeah, it is listed in the workshop schedule, but it'll probably come on after we have the new council established. So.
Can I just assist there,
Yeah.
CEO? Back in many moons ago, we used to have council, and there used to be another committee called Council of the Whole, similar to the workshop, which we used to have in the casino.
Yeah. And it may well be that's what it's certainly an option the council can consider. I mean, this has worked okay, but it's got its limitations.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Dutta.
Just need some clarification. I know this was already answered and clarified, but for the sake of what's happening, I just want a clear clarification in my own mind. The unsolicited proposals policy, it is my understanding that there are 3 stages, and the fact that it was brought in council, it was quite legitimate. There was nothing wrong with it, following the process.
I'm not sure what your question is, Councillor Dutta.
Well, the process hasn't actually commenced. But
you have 3 stages in the policies, and it's stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3.
Yeah,
in the policy which I've read, it's got
right.
3 stages, and it has got the ethics and everything. So all what I'm saying, as per the policy that we have, it is very clear that there was nothing wrong with that motion coming to the council. That's what I would clarify.
No, well, I said that the other night. Yeah.
That's quite okay. Oh, thank you. All right. Because I think that needs to be clarified. Otherwise, there's too much misinterpretation and misinformation.
I guess the point that you're sort of referencing the unsolicited bid process. So the motion happened, and then we haven't actually enacted the unsolicited bid process yet. That's still to happen. So.
Oh yeah, that's a different. That's the second process.
Yeah.
But I was talking about the process 1. That was quite okay. It was legitimate in the process. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? Okay. With that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you, everybody.